Good evening. It is 6:03 p.m., Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. I'd like to welcome everyone in our City Council audience, as well as Brady Johnson and our listening audience at WCBU. I'd also like to welcome everyone that's in the audience and watching Cable 22. Madam Clerk, the mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen,
Present.
Councilmember Sear, Councilmember Graham, Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Councilmember Jensen,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Euler,
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach,
Here.
Councilmember Rockriegel, and Councilmember Velpula.
Present.
We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask everyone to please join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Sear, welcome back. We missed you. Been in our thoughts and prayers. I'd like to remind everyone that next Tuesday, November 16th at 6 p.m., we have a special meeting of the Joint City Council and Town Board. And at that time, we will continue our budget discussion and hopefully get a budget passed. We have several proclamations today. In fact, we have 4. Okay. The first proclamation is the Community Festival of Nativities. I think we have Father Tasso. If you could join us at the front, and President Scott Johnson. Father Tasso is with the All Saints Greek Orthodox Church, and President Johnson is with the Peoria Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas December 25th is the day Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ as Christmas Day, and whereas the story of the Nativity and the events surrounding the birth of Jesus are important in religious celebrations at Christmas, and whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church, Holy Family Catholic Church, Peoria Heights Congregational Church, and All Saints Greek Orthodox Church have joined together to present the Community Festival of Nativities, now in its 6th year. And whereas visitors from the greater Peoria area, Bloomington Normal, Chicago, and beyond will enjoy hundreds of nativities on display from around the world. Whereas this year, a selection of nativities from the James and Emilia Govan Kresh collection from the Loyola University Museum of Art will be on display, in addition to over 2,000 pieces from Diane Legg's Fontanini collection and Roland Johnson's beautiful ink mosaics. There will also be performances from local musicians, and children will enjoy a scavenger hunt and bingo. Whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is hosting this year's event titled A Thrill of Hope at their place of worship, 3700 West Reservoir, December 2nd through the 5th. This is a free event and open to the public. Hours and information may be found at communityfestivalofnativities.com. Now, therefore, I, Reed Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby recognize the Community Festival of Nativities. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor Ali. On behalf of all the communities participating in the Community Festival of the Nativities, we thank you and the City Council for your acknowledgement. The Nativity, the birth of Christ, is the hope of all Christians all over the world. We pray that we can share this hope with Peoria and that your work and the work of the Council may make this city into a beacon of hope in the world. Thank you.
Father.
On behalf of the local churches that sponsor the Community Festival of Nativities, we thank you, Mayor, for this proclamation. The Community Festival of Nativities began in 2016 with two objectives. First, to create a Christmas season event that encouraged community members to remember the reason for the season, the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. Second, to create an opportunity for ecumenical collaboration. We invite the Mayor, members of the City Council, and all the community members to join this year as we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Our next proclamation is the Richwoods High School International Baccalaureate, or IB, program. And we have the principal of Richwoods High School, Ms. Carly Emkin, and we have the IB coordinator, Mr. Tom Hayes. The proclamation reads, whereas we recognize the Richwoods High School International Baccalaureate Program, also known as the IB program, for the distinguished honor of being one of the most robust and sought-after high school educational programs in Central Illinois and a cornerstone of Peoria Public Schools. Whereas the Richwoods IB Diploma Program is an academically challenging two-year curriculum that begins during a student's junior year of high school. IB aims to develop self-motivated student inquirers who are globally minded and prepares them to exit high school well prepared for the rigors of the world's premier colleges and universities. Students who graduate with the IB Diploma Program are academically ready to excel in post-secondary school and do so with many college credits. And whereas there are only 753 IB schools in the country, and only 13 schools are in Illinois. Of those 13, Richwoods High School is the only one located outside of the Chicago area. Whereas the IB program operating at Richwoods since 2002 has seen tremendous growth in the last decade under the stewardship of former IB coordinator Travis Bowlby, going from 24 total participants in 2011 to 56 total graduating seniors from the IB program in May 2021, and 370 total graduates in the last 8 years. And whereas under the new leadership of Principal Carly Emkin and IB Coordinator Tom Hayes, the IB program will continue to expand and deliver a rich educational experience to a diverse cross-section of Peoria high school students. Now, therefore, I, Reed Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby recognize the great work and the historic achievements of the Richwoods High School IB program.
Thank you so much for this recognition and honor. On behalf of Peoria Public Schools and Richwoods High School, we thank you for this, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Ali and council members. My name is Tom Hayes. I am the new IB coordinator. But I've been in Peoria Public Schools for the past 23 years. It's been an honor and privilege. And I know many of you up there I have taught your children, including Breasia. So tell her I said hello.
I will.
We are, as Ms. Emkin said, very proud of the IB program and what we're doing. And as you said in the proclamation, we're very rare, we're unique, we're special. And we take a lot of pride in that. The things that the students are doing in the IB program are nothing short of amazing. And, you know, they come out of high school more prepared for college and life than I think really any program out there. And I mean any program. I don't think there's anything that beats this program. So it's very special. We really appreciate and are honored by the recognition. And we thank you very much.
You're welcome. Before you have your seats, we have one of the parents on our council who would like to speak. Councilwoman Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say a few words. As a mother, a very proud mother of a 2021 and a 2020 IB graduate from Richwoods, I can't say enough about the program. My kids both, you know, were very well prepared. Were offered a number of scholarships at a number of different schools. And then when they started in college, they both had a number of credits, and they're way ahead of their peers. And the program really prepared them not only for college, but for the real world. And it's a huge asset for Peoria and for Peoria Public Schools. So we need to, I'm glad it's strong. We need to keep it growing. We need to keep the word out, and it's something that we should celebrate. So I'm happy to recognize the IB program, and I thank you, Mrs. Inkin, and you, Mr. Hayes. You were one of my both boys' favorite teachers, so they're just disappointed they didn't have you as the director of the IB program when they were there. So hats off to you guys. Way to go.
Thank you. Our next proclamation goes to Peoria Symphony Orchestra, who presents her story, Betty Friedan. We have Maestro George Steluto and Susan Hoffman, Executive Director of the Peoria Symphony Orchestra. Proclamation reads, whereas for 124 years, the Peoria Symphony Orchestra, one of Peoria's oldest arts organizations, has endeavored to entertain, educate, and inspire through music. And whereas the Peoria Symphony Orchestra, heralded as one of the esteemed arts organizations in the region, is also a professional orchestra employing hundreds of musicians since its inception. Their work would not be possible without their volunteer board of directors, their mighty staff, the devotion of the Peoria Symphony Guild, and the talent of Maestro George Steluto, who has held the position of music director since 2010. And whereas the Peoria Symphony Orchestra is a leader in making concerts accessible with initiatives like the Musical Discovery Concerts for area children, pre-concert lectures, and providing a variety of musical selections that are sure to enchant existing and potential patrons of the arts. And whereas the Peoria Symphony Orchestra not only celebrates and showcases the talents of its musicians, but also celebrates milestones in the history of our community. And whereas February the 4th, 2021 was noted as the 100th birthday of Peorian Betty Friedan, a 1938 valedictorian of Peoria High School and a resident of the West Bluff, Friedan was the author of the groundbreaking book, The Feminine Mystique, founding member of the National Organization for Women, and a powerful catalyst for the modern feminist movement. And whereas to mark this momentous occasion, the Peoria Symphony Orchestra will present a concert on Saturday, November 20th at the Peoria Civic Center Theater entitled Her Story, a tribute to Betty Friedan. The centerpiece of this program will be the world premiere of Every Woman, a Friedan Centennial Memoir by Stephanie Ann Boyd, PSO Composer in Residence. Now, therefore, I read Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, do hereby acknowledge the 100th birthday of Betty Friedan and the commission composition to mark this occasion as performed by the Peoria Symphony Orchestra.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor for us to be presenting this concert to one of Peoria's most well-known citizens, somebody who, regardless of your politics, your gender identification, your life values, her work has affected everybody's life every day. And when I found out that she was from Peoria and that 2021 was her 100th birthday, I figured we had to do a program. But I wanted to say, Your Honor, that in addition to you honoring us by doing the opening address at the concert, and thank you for agreeing to do that, we're also honored by several international figures that are coming for this concert. And that's why I think it's important that, you know, we're honoring Betty, but Peoria itself is being honored by the presence of these individuals. First, of course, is Stephanie Ann Boyd, who's a wonderful up-and-coming composer. I've often told Stephanie I see a Pulitzer Prize in her future. She writes about women's issues and social justice issues as part of the content of her artistic output, and she has been performed in nearly all 50 states and over 23 countries around the world. The second person joining us for this event is the world-famous mezzo-soprano Michelle de Jong. And Michelle has been on every major stage, in every major opera company, and with every major orchestra around the world. I met Michelle at the Ravinia Festival, and when I told her about this project, she said to me, I want to be there and I want to be involved in this project. So that honors Peoria, and it honors our honoring of Betty, that somebody of her stature actually wanted to be here. And finally, the narrator for our commissioned work about Betty Friedan is none other than Deborah Rutter, the former president of the Chicago Symphony, who is now the president of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. And not only is she the first woman president of the Kennedy Center in Washington, she's probably the most powerful and influential cultural leader in the arts, in the art world in the country, because the Kennedy Center is the biggest cultural center as far as performing arts goes in the United States. So for her to agree to come here and narrate and participate is an honor to Betty, and it's an honor to Peoria. So thank you.
Pretty amazing. Susan?
Thank you for the proclamation and the notice of what we're doing here. We've been here 124 years, and we really feel we're part of the cultural fabric of our community. And we love to be a resource to our community and work in these kinds of ways. I'll be reaching out to all of the council members and inviting you to attend the concert. We want you to come and experience this lovely performance in this facility and know what Peoria can be proud of, having this wonderful professional orchestra in the area. So we hope that you will come and join us and take part in this celebration.
One more thing. And to the International Baccalaureate, one of the things that I've noticed about history and Betty Friedan is most people under 30 don't know who she is. And somebody from Peoria High School who went on to Stanford told me, I can't believe it took me taking a women's studies course at Stanford to find out that Betty Friedan went to my high school. So if you can spread the word to the young people in your schools and in your program, we'd really appreciate it.
Bravo. Thank you. The last proclamation recognizes Community Foundation Week, and we have Mark Roberts, the CEO of the Community Foundation of Central Illinois, and Don Forrest, Chairman of the Board of the Community Foundation of Central Illinois. Whereas residents, neighborhoods, institutions, and organizations in the city of Peoria have historically benefited from the ongoing generosity of donations from families, businesses, and community foundations. Whereas the Community Foundation of Central Illinois, CFCI, has contributed over $25 million in grants to nonprofit organizations and more than $74 million through depository fund contributions since its inception in 1985. Whereas the Community Foundation of Central Illinois, along with the community foundations around the nation, provides the opportunity for individuals from all walks of life to be philanthropists in small, medium, and large ways. Community foundations, with the assistance of volunteers, provide effective leadership in communities, often supplementing or assisting in the coordination of public programs and other private services. And whereas the community is fortunate to have the Community Foundation of Central Illinois as a resource for collective giving, their dedicated staff and volunteers work every day to inspire philanthropy, improve the quality of life, strengthen nonprofits, foster collaboration, and provide leadership in Central Illinois. And whereas one of the greatest ways to ensure a strong community, economic vitality, and educational success is through the active presence of a community foundation. In the 2020 fiscal year, through the generosity of donors, CFCI distributed 2,295 grants totaling $5,503,470 to local nonprofit organizations serving Central Illinois. Those funds were distributed through our communities, assisting thousands of people. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, do hereby acknowledge November 12th through November 18th as Community Foundation Week.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. It's a pleasure to be here today. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, including the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Community Foundation, Don Forrest, who's joined me tonight, our fund holders, and the staff of the Community Foundation, it's my honor to accept this proclamation in recognition of Community Foundation Week. I wanted to offer very quickly a very dry technical definition of a community foundation, because I find by and large that even though we're in our 36th year as an organization, people generally don't understand what a community foundation is and what it does. The dry technical definition: an independent public charity that stewards philanthropic resources from institutional and individual donors to local nonprofits. What I prefer to say, in a simpler, better way, community foundations help connect people who care with causes that matter. And that helps us build strong, vibrant communities. This week, we are recognizing, with the mayor's help, the vital role of more than 750 community foundations from throughout the United States, supporting essential services like healthcare and food banks and domestic violence shelters and libraries and the arts and volunteer fire departments and much, much more. In 2019, these foundations throughout the United States granted an estimated $25 billion, and that's an all-time high, to a variety of nonprofit activities in the arts, education, health and human services, the environment, disaster relief, and much more. Locally, as the mayor just mentioned, the Community Foundation of Central Illinois granted $5.5 million in our last fiscal year and have granted over $106 million since our inception in 1985. The best news, our total assets have grown to nearly $80 million. We're growing very rapidly. That allows us to deploy more support to the community to improve the quality of life here. So along with our generous donors and fund holders, we're proud to play that very active role. Finally, community foundations know that the investments they make today will help people for many years to come. And by marshaling the financial resources of everyone in a community, individuals, families, businesses, we will collectively address critical community issues. And by strategically working with so many in the community, which is what the Community Foundation of Central Illinois does, we're helping to pave the way towards an ever-improving quality of life in our community. If you're listening, if you're here, if you're listening or you're watching and you'd like to learn more, communityfoundationci.org. check us out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, or our YouTube channel. We'd love you to learn more about your community foundation. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Thank you. Moving on, Madam Clerk.
We are at the minutes.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting held on October 19th, 2021, and the joint city council and town board meeting held on October 26th, 2021, as printed.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Any comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one town item, 21-338, is a request from the town officials to approve the October 2021 actual expenditures and to approve the November 2021 anticipated expenditures for the town of the city of Peoria.
Councilmember Graham,
I move to approve as outlined.
seconded by Councilmember Jackson. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Regenbach. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 21-339 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency. 21-340 is a communication with a request to approve the funding recommendations from the CDBG Public Services Advisory Commission for the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Public Services Funding in the amount of $278,100. 21-341 is a communication with a request to approve the funding recommendations from the Home for All Continuum of Care for the 2022-2023 Emergency Solutions Grant. 21-342 is a communication with a request to accept a grant from the Illinois Department of Transportation for the Highway Safety Improvement Program through the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission for guardrail replacement in the amount of $129,992.13, with the city's estimated minimum local agency funding match in the amount of $12,999.21. 21-343 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director and Economic Development Department with a request to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2021 revised annual budget in the amount of $100,000 to provide required maintenance, remediation, repairs, and renovations for 418 Southwest Water Street. 21-344 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance levying a special services area real estate tax in the amount of $148,060 against specified parcels Exhibit A for tax year 2021 for the Knoxville Junction Special Service Area. 21-345 is a communication from the Peoria Firemen's Pension Fund Board of Trustees recommending a 2022 tax levy in the amount of $14,234,520 with a request to receive and file. 21-346 is a communication from the Peoria Firemen's Pension Fund Board of Trustees regarding the municipal compliance report with a request to receive and file. And that concludes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any items to remove from consent? Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 21-342.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
21-340.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the other items? Moved by Councilmember Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Uh-oh. Okay, Madam Clerk?
21-340 is a communication with a request to approve the funding recommendations from the CDBG Public Services Advisory Commission for the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Public Services Funding in the amount of $278,100.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question on this. One comment I just wanted to make before I ask my question. I'm very pleased to see that services for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking have been added as one of our funding priorities. I've been advocating to put that back in for the last year or so, so I'm pleased to see that that's, again, one of the funding priorities for the CDBG funding. And the question I have, I'm wondering, I don't know if the city manager knows this or perhaps Director Doolin. I know that we don't know exactly how much money that we'll have for the next year. Is it possible if, like the Build Back Better legislation is passed or some of the other legislations that have passed that are focused on some of these issues, would we get more CDBG money possibly through that? Do you know?
Councilwoman, I don't know offhand if we're anticipating that we're going to see an increase in the amount of community development block grant funds. This is a kind of a proportionate set aside that we use for the commission to do its work. If we do, I think that we would certainly go back to the commission with any additional funds that we would have and ask them to go through the process of allocation again. So I don't know if Director Doolin has anything more to add to that. I just don't know yet what we're going to see as far as money that might be flowing from that CDBG fund.
Director?
Thank you. Yes, just what the city manager said. We've tentatively, nothing's identified in any of the federal packages, whether home or CDBG would see increases. There may be, there may not be, depending on what that increase would be. Every year once we do get the allocation, we bring that budget amendment back to council at that point anyways. So if we did get an increase, we would bring it back in front of you as well.
Right, okay. I think too, I wanted to thank you for providing this 4-year summary. I think it's important to highlight and for the public that in the last 4 years, 2017 through 2021, we've awarded almost $1.3 million to agencies through the CDBG program, and we've helped a lot of people in Peoria. So I just think that's very helpful that you provided that. And with that, I enthusiastically move to approve.
Second, seconded by Councilmember Reckriegel. Any other questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-342 is a communication with a request to approve a resolution to accept a grant from the Illinois Department of Transportation for the Highway Safety Improvement Program through the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission for guardrail replacement in the amount of $129,992.13, with the city's estimated minimum local agency funding match in the amount of $12,999.21.
Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I first looked at this item, I thought there must be a typo because it says Council Districts 1, 2, 4, and 5. And then my second thought was, the drivers in the 3rd District must be better than the rest in the city, so the guardrails don't need to be replaced. But in all seriousness, I did call Director Powers for an explanation to that. So, Director, if you would please share that with all of us to avoid me getting an unusual number of phone calls tomorrow on this item. So,
sure, Councilor, thank you. Actually, it is that the drivers in the 3rd District are Actually, it's not. And some of this, I don't like when I have to sidestep something and say, this was before I got here, and everybody that was involved is gone, to include PUATs. So we did some research as to what happened. This is the subject of a grant, obviously, and they did an assessment of the guardrails that were in the worst condition relative to throughout the city of Peoria to qualify for the grant. And it's just as a matter of happenstance that the 3rd District did not have a guardrail that met that condition. And that's it. There's nothing beyond that. The report was provided to IDOT. They verified it through their secondary verification. In fact, the employee that did it now works at IDOT. And that's what we have as an explanation. There really isn't another besides that. However, we will address any guardrail issues, or as many guardrail issues as we can in any district, Counselor. So that's a safety item.
Thank you for that explanation, and with that, I move for the approval.
Can I get a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at first readings. 21-347 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending the restaurant license requirements in Chapter 27 of the Code of the City of Peoria.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've asked Community Development Director Joe Doolan to come to the mic to just describe what this ordinance does and what we're trying to do by eliminating some duplicative licensing requirements. Director?
Thank you, sir. If everyone remembers, about 2 months ago, Councilman Sear asked us to take a hard look at all the different business licenses within the City of Peoria codes and see what we could possibly eliminate that might be a duplication of efforts for other governments, bodies, or just things we haven't enforced or things that have been placed for 30 or 40 years, and what we could do really to our code to make it more simple for businesses to operate within the City of Peoria. One of those things that we mentioned were restaurant licenses. Unfortunately, we accidentally omitted changing that in Chapter 27 because we had just changed what was in Chapter 18 at the time. This requirement is in the City of Peoria Code, requires all restaurants in the City of Peoria to obtain a license with us. We have not enforced this license or collected from restaurants for quite a few years. The original intent behind it was to put it in place to ensure that businesses, we were keeping track of which restaurants were open in the City of Peoria so we could ensure they were remitting their taxes owed to the City of Peoria. However, over time, we've worked really close with the Health Department. So the Health Department sends us pretty regular lists of the restaurants in the City of Peoria through their Health Department inspections and process for their licensing. So us charging that fee was not necessary. Since we haven't been charging that fee and we get that information regularly from the Health Department, we felt it's appropriate to eliminate this fee as well, as opposed to trying to charge restaurants for this fee. In addition, when looking at the ordinance, the penalty for failing to omit your taxes to the City of Peoria, we felt, as looking through all the ordinances, how we can continue to be business friendly. One of the things we identified to continue to be business friendly is making sure there's a level playing field. Such a large percentage of businesses in Peoria do abide by the rules. They omit the taxes to the City of Peoria. They follow our guidances. So for those that don't, they have an unfair advantage against the majority of businesses that are. So by increasing that penalty against those businesses and ensuring we have a level playing field across the community, we felt a higher penalty would be appropriate for those who failed to follow that guideline.
Thank you, Director. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Dooling, thank you very much for all the work you've done the last few months on this case. And I know there's 4 or 5 more items that we need to meet and discuss, but I really appreciate all your help. And there was an article while I was gone in the paper talking about how not so friendly we are to businesses. I kind of was offended by that article. I want to talked a little bit to the fact that your predecessor, Mr. Ross Black, did an excellent job over the last 4 years to eliminate over 300 pages in our code to make this city more business-friendly that nobody mentioned at all, and the work that you're doing, President. So thank you very much for what you're doing. I know that we're much friendlier to business than we ever been, and we can keep going that direction. So with that said, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to accept and file.
Receive and file,
Receive and file,
seconded by Councilmember Reckriegel. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank our 5th District Councilman for this effort, this initiation on just streamlining our code, et cetera, and the Community Development Department in not just cooperating, but being in favor of these efforts. So my hat's off to the both of you, and thank you. I do have a question concerning the fine for non-payment of taxes. We're raising that significantly. How does this compare with such penalties for other sales tax generators in the city? In other words, is this for real estate tax or is this for restaurant, hotel, restaurant, and amusement tax?
This would be for the hotel, restaurant, amusement taxes.
Okay. So what are we doing with other sales tax type businesses in the community? Are these fines in line, or are we singling out restaurants?
If I could, the sales tax is submitted to the state of Illinois through the ST1 form that businesses are required to submit. So the non-payment of sales taxes is handled by the state at the state level. The state does not collect restaurant taxes, so that is our requirement to have to collect those. So that this is somewhat unique for us in terms of the collection aspect that we would have with that. As far as looking at what we do with regards to the payment of local motor fuel taxes, we can look at that and report back to you on that, which would be another local tax that we do have requirements that businesses submit to the city of Peoria. Same with hotel taxes and same with amusement taxes. So we can certainly look and provide a report back. Since this is simply the first reading, we can have that information for you when this item comes back up for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I guess my interest would be in the HRA tax specifically. I don't have an assumption here. I just want to make sure that we've got a level playing field. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Doolin, for all your work on this and the other condensing or removal of codes at Mr. Sears' direction. It's been very thorough and very helpful. One question, I guess I don't quite understand the way that the amendment is written. There's no reference in this ordinance about them paying their taxes, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe this is directed at legal, where the portion is about the penalty and that you're raising it to $5,000. It doesn't really say anything in there about for failing to pay taxes. So I'm assuming, is that somewhere else in this section, or?
It is in another section. It is in another section of the code, and when this returns, we can provide more of that language so that it's easier to read to see exactly what it's referencing.
Okay, or maybe see if maybe we need to tweak the language in A just to make sure it's clear that that's what the violation is for. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Reckriegel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question for our listening public to Director Doolin. Just in being in the restaurant business, I'm familiar with this, but I think just for our listening public, this in no way takes into effect, I think, any of the safety regulations that restaurants have, because that's actually done through our health department in our inspections, correct?
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, the health department regulations for sanitation, their food license, all of that is done separately through the health department. That is why this is such a duplication of those efforts, because of the relationship we have with our health department. Over the years, we've really worked really hard with the health department. When a new restaurant opens, our building inspectors go out with them to do all that. So all that licensing is done through them. That will continue to happen.
Great. Thank you very much.
Questions? Director Doolin, thank you, Councilman Sear, for your leadership on this. We have a motion to receive and file. No more questions. Please cast your ballots. Passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 21-348 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director with a request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to stormwater utility.
Mr. Manager, can you give us explanation there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The item in front of you this evening is the first of two revenue items that were related to recommendations as part of the 2022-2023 budget. With regards to the stormwater utility fee, we recommended as part of the budget that we freeze the stormwater utility fee at its current rate for the next coming year, 2022, and then beginning in 2023, we would move to the rate of inflationary growth that was adopted in the ordinance. So in essence, we're just taking a freeze on that. Inflation this year is about 5.4%. It's anticipated to go down over the course of 2022, so we felt that at this point in time, the revenues are sufficient for the operations of the department, and we'd like to freeze the revenues.
Good, good. Any questions? Councilmember Kelly?
I would move to approve.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Jensen. Any other comments or questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-349 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director with a request to adopt an ordinance extending Article 18 of Article 18, Licenses and Miscellaneous Business Regulations of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to public safety pension fee.
Mr. Manager, first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the second item pertaining to revenues. Unfortunately, in this regard, this is a fee that we are recommending that we continue as part of the 2022-2023 budget. This is the public safety pension fee. We know that this is an area of the budget where we have continued pressure in order to fiscal pressure in order to make additional contributions. So we recommended as part of the budget that we extend the fee. This would require, or the way that the ordinance was drafted, it would set the fee to collect $2,044,700 and then freeze that at that level, and it would be there indefinitely unless council acted on it. One thing I do want to point out with the ordinance, when it was adopted originally, there was language included in the ordinance that it does require a 2/3 vote of the city council, so we wanted to make that clear that any modifications to the ordinance as or amendments that would be made, so this one included, would require 8 votes of the city council to go forward.
Right. Thank you. Councilmember Rodrigo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we get to do something that doesn't often happen within this building, and that's we actually get to sunset something. I know a lot of government bodies often talk about that, and they actually get to we get to witness that tonight. When this fee was put in for 3 years ago, it was reported to be able to do something to the ultimate liability that we faced. And we've seen that liability continue to grow exponentially since this fee was actually put in. And I think that the residents of Peoria have spoken up pretty loudly that this is something that should be included in our traditional budget and not as an extra fee that they sing on their properties. And while this does produce revenue for our budget, I am requesting and putting forward a motion to deny the ordinance extension or recontinuation, because I think it is important tonight that not only do we let this fee end, but that we vote to be able to not extend this again. Thank you.
Is there a second to the motion to deny? Councilmember Jensen. Any other discussion? Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was opposed to this when it was first proposed 3 years ago and voted against it in 2018. I don't think it's a good idea. Back then, I proposed alternative reductions. I think we need, for the future, to look at potential other revenue sources, which I also proposed 3 years ago. So I am, once again, opposed to this and will be voting against it. Thank you.
Regenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As some of you may recall, when we had this discussion 3 years ago, a request I made at that time was for us to put together a working group or a blue ribbon commission or an ad hoc committee, however you want to frame it, of stakeholders in the community, include the large employers, include the neighborhood associations, the homeowners associations, include the nonprofits. And I would respectfully ask the mayor that we put that back on our radar, and that once the dust settles from the budget time, that we consider putting a group together that could hear the manager's story of the $400 million pension obligation that the city faces and the 19 years we have to pay that down. So think of that in terms of your mortgage, and that's just a little daunting as to what that means. And I think we always say, and we say this repeatedly, that we need to work with Springfield to get something done. So getting a group of stakeholders with Peoria emblazoned on their chest, taking a bus to Springfield or going to visit with our legislators, I think that's a must, that they need to hear from the community at large and not simply from council members. So I thank Councilman Ruckriegel for the substitute motion here, but I do think this is something that we need to have a broader discussion as a community on. So I would ask you to keep that on your to-do list.
Take a look at it, Councilman.
Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you. Manager Urick, what happens in 2024 if this goes away?
Well, what's going to happen earlier than that is you're going to have to find $2 million a year of additional revenues to contribute towards pensions. And the pensions are growing at a clip of about 6% a year. And that's just till we get to a point where we possibly can catch up with where we need to be. Councilman Ringenbach mentioned that we have 19 years to amortize. Really, it's about 360 of that 400 million, because we have to be 90% funded. So if you take 360 million and try and amortize that over 19 years, it's $28 million just for the unfunded liabilities. When you add in then the current contribution cost that we have to make every year for our current employees, that number pushes closer to $40 million a year of what we should be contributing towards pensions. We're currently contributing right in the area of around $27 million. So we're still underwater right now in order to fix that. If the General Assembly decides that they want to extend the amortization period out 20 more years, that buys a little bit of time, but we still have to pay that back. We still have to make those contributions, and it's going to have to come, absent another revenue source, it's going to have to come from existing revenues that we have, which means you have less money for operations.
So that's going to mean, because most of our budget revolves around public safety, with all the cuts we've made, the several hundred positions we've cut in the past 6 years, 6 out of 10 of your years, Mr. Manager, that means that we're going to have to cut public safety. Now, I'm going to be here, God willing, until 2025. I know an election cycle is coming up for some of these at-large people, but there is going to be life beyond 2024. And we need to have life in Peoria where people want to live. And that means they need the core basic services. You punch a hole in this budget of $2 million, the ramifications will go directly to public safety. That means police, fire, and believe it or not, public works is public safety too. And believe it or not, code enforcement's public safety. So, Manager, absent some epiphany that occurs in Springfield, which Councilman Riggenbach has been talking about for months. He's been very consistent on it. What we're doing tonight is setting this city on a collision course to have to make draconian cuts to public safety. Is that right or wrong?
You're certainly exacerbating the issue, and one option, as I've outlined in one of the budget report backs, is that you could look at making expenditure cuts. I think that my recommendation for, at least for the first 2 years, would be to lower the amount of pension contributions we're making in the short term, but also use some existing revenues that we're anticipating to come in this year. So that will buy 2 years, basically. But after that, you're going to have to look at where some additional revenues are going to come from. So
that seems eminently reasonable, because you're tasked with the responsibility of running a city that's not up for grabs, where people want to live. And the motion before us is not what you just stated, correct?
It's a motion to deny. So
it's not what you just stated.
Right.
So, I'm not going to support a motion that destroys public safety in a city that right now is trying to hang on for dear life. I won't do it. And the last people who should want to see this happen would be those who are interested in selling property. Those who are interested in selling property in the city of Peoria. Because with the chaos that's going on now, nobody's going to want to live here. So, let's just understand, if you support this motion, you've just punched a hole in the public safety fabric of this city. Katie, bar the door. I'm here to tell you there will be consequences. And I'll be sitting here, if God allows me to still be here, and I'll have to deal with it. I don't know how many of the at-larges will be here, but everybody tonight needs to do what is correct for the city, Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I was adamantly opposed to this fee 3 years ago when it came to be. I've spent 3 years trying to ensure its termination. I ran a campaign against tax and fee increases and managed to earn another seat here around the horseshoe, so I'm hardly worried about that. Not that any of us should even care about that. We're stewards of the taxpayers' money, and that's what we're here for. And the public said earlier this year, no more taxes and fees to fund pensions. Putting this $2 million fee in didn't help the pension problem. The pension problem actually grew during the same period of time, and all this did was help take the eye off the ball for the actual problem. So I will be supporting the motion to deny, and we need to take some of the direction here of Councilman Riggenbach and actually start trying to figure out how we're going to fix the real problem rather than dumping the problem on the backs of the taxpayers. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just looking here. I had a couple questions for the city manager. To Council Member Graham's point with regards to public safety, and it looks like in our proposed budget, we're scheduled to, not only bring on board 30 police officers, it looks like a total of 38 staffers? I'm just wondering what would, if we don't support this, what does cuts mean to our plans to bring on more police officers and as we try to, deal with this whole issue of violence in our community?
So in the budget report back number 5 that you have at your desk, that was a request of Councilman Allen. He asked, what are some of the options if council was not able to or did not support the extension of the public safety pension fee? And I provided 3 options within that report back for council to consider. Option 1 is the most conservative option, and that would be to cut $4.1 million of expense out of the budget over the next 2 years. That would likely mean about 24 positions out of the general fund we would have to not fill and likely eliminate that we were planning on filling as part of this upcoming budget year. The second option would be, as I mentioned just previously, would be to lower our pension contributions down roughly about $2.2 million over 2 years. Roughly a little over $550,000 in each of the pension funds, police and fire. That, by lowering that contribution, it's still above what the Department of Insurance has suggested would be our statutory contribution level. So we're still above that figure, and it's considerably above the statutory contribution level as determined by our pension board's actuaries. So that's one way to carve out a portion of that. The second would be then to look at cutting expenses by $1.9 million over the next 2 years. That would likely mean the elimination of probably 11 positions out of the budget that we would have to come back to you and say, here's the ones we would eliminate. The third option, and the option that I recommend that we proceed with, as I said, is to lower the pension contributions by $2.2 million and then utilize what really is amounting to the economic recovery windfall we're seeing right now in some of our state shared revenues and setting aside about $1.9 million of that. I believe that even with the estimates and projections that we've made to the budget right now that is in this budget book, which says we're going to see our revenues exceed our expenses by $10 million, I think that number is going to be $2 million higher than that, just based on what we've been seeing as far as our collections for personal property replacement tax, income tax collections, and sales tax collections. So we think that those numbers are going to be higher in 2021, and we can set aside those dollars, not make any operating cuts to the recommended budget book or the recommended budget for 2022 and 2023, But it will mean that we need to watch it, and really, I think we're going to have to come forward with some sort of revenue stream, because you're at really an inflection point here, because what you have is you either have to start cutting the budget considerably. You have $95 million of expense in your general fund budget. You're going to have to cut. It'll grow over time, but it might get as much as $16 million out of that $95 million you'll have to cut over time if there's no additional revenues. Or you have to look at trying to find other revenue sources to fund those pension costs till we get to that 90% figure by 2040. And to the council, I just want to make this point very clear. The way the system is structured by Springfield, all you control is setting a property tax or setting a tax to levy for these pension contributions. You don't control the pension board. You don't control the benefits. You don't control any of the machinery that goes on around this pension system. It's been designed by the state, and all we do is pay the bill.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, I just don't agree with the statement you just made. I think another way is also to control our expenses. You talk about adding revenues all the time, but we do not control Springfield, but we can control our expenses here, correct? So we can make cuts wherever it needs to be made so that we at least can control that much. Now tell me, in the budget here, I haven't had a chance to read every line, but what are you suggesting for a bond this year? What do you want to, what part of the budget, or how much bond do you want to issue this year in the budget?
The budget includes about $10 million in borrowing to pay for facility-related improvements, as well as for capital stock of the fire department to replace 6 vehicles for the fire department as part of this budget, or 3 vehicles as part of this budget for the fire department. Excuse me.
So, Ben, this is my 5th budget right now. Tell me that's something that, I mean, I don't really agree with what you said earlier, or maybe I should say it was not. I don't think you're telling the full story tonight. Tell me about how much money we're paying this year for police pension.
So what we're contributing right now for police pensions, or what we're recommended for police pensions and for fire pensions, as far as the obligation for 2022, that's in the recommended budget book, it would be $27.7 million.
Okay, so you said that earlier, $27 million. This is the current contribution.
That's the obligation that we have that we then use personal property replacement tax, property tax, the pension fee, and a general fund contribution to pay all of those $27 million.
I understand. How much comes from the general fund?
In the 2022 budget, it's anticipated that $6.4 million will come from the general fund.
Okay. So you said earlier, somebody said there are unfunded liabilities, $360 million for the next 19 years, which is an additional, did you say an additional $28 million a year?
We have 19 years to amortize that $360 million.
So the $28 million is on top of the $27 million we have, well, we're not committed, but we have to give this year, correct?
Well, the way that we're accelerating our payments each year by roughly about 6% for police and 6% for fire. And that's picking up some of that unfunded liability cost. The other portion that comes from is the investments that the pension boards make. Currently, as of today, fire is about $8 million ahead for the year, and police are about $11.3 million ahead.
So why are they ahead?
Well, because the market has been pretty good for the last couple of years.
18% and 19% this year. How much of that, what kind of effect does it have on our liability when it goes up that much? Because I know it's dollar for dollar on the way down. When we underperform is dollar for dollar. I might make sure everybody understands. When we underperform,
there's a 5-year smoothing average.
Thank you.
That's built into that. So while there may be 18% and 19%, you smooth that out over 5 years. So if you have a bad year and you have a good year, that gets smoothed out over that period of time. But the more good years in a row that the pension funds have while the market is strong, that's going to help in terms of lowering our contributions that we're going to have to make over the long term.
Am I correct in saying that on the bad year, on the down year, though, it's dollar for dollar? Correct?
On the bad year, we still have to make it, the taxpayer still has to make that up, yes.
So this $2 million, that'd be a fair assessment for me to say that $2 million is really just a Band-Aid on our problem, like Councilman Orler said. We're not really, even $2 million.
Even when we discussed it 3 years ago.
On the $360 million, it's a Band-Aid, correct?
We said that 3 years ago when we discussed it.
I just want to make sure, but people are trying to bullying other people and all that. This is just a Band-Aid. It doesn't provide any solution whatsoever on a $360 million unfunded liability. Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Councilmember Reckriegel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it seems like we keep repeating the story that if you vote a certain way, that you must be against public safety. I'll guarantee the public, and I hope they're listening tonight, that there is nobody around this council who is against public safety. Please hear that loud and clear. And nobody around this council gets to label people, and they need to stop it. Because you know what? This is not about public safety. Nobody is saying what the recommendation here is. City Manager, you were entrusted to bring a balanced budget to the council for discussion. I'm going to say, in my opinion, you didn't do that because you included a revenue source that we hadn't approved yet and that was supposed to sunset. And now all of a sudden, because we're not improving it, now there are certain council members who are saying you're against public safety. There are a lot of ways to be able to handle that cut. And if I hear you right, you're talking about some sales revenues that are going up. We've got the online sales, which have increased over the years because we get that coming back, correct? Some state revenues that are increasing. And how much did you get from the federal government, or how much are we going to get over the next 4 years from the American CARES Act?
Well, the American Rescue Plan.
Or MS Rescue.
We'll see roughly about $47 million.
$47 million. So to sit here and say that to be able to live to what we agreed to, whether you voted for it or not, and I was an adamant no on this because I said that night, what will happen is this will force us to forget the problem. We should have been down in Springfield, not only with our union members, but also with other communities because we're all facing this together. But instead, Springfield made other decisions. When they decided to consolidate some pension boards, what happened was also they changed the tiering, which increased the liabilities, which people don't talk about. And there are restrictions that Springfield places on those pension boards into where they can really invest their money, so they can't do sometimes the things that they would like to be able to do, which could actually help this problem as well. And so there are things that are happening outside the city, but we don't ever go down, and I said this, we wouldn't try to solve the problem, and 3 years would go by, and all of a sudden, all we would have known is we've changed the calendar. But I think it's very disingenuous to sit here and say that out of this budget that you're proposing, that should have been included in the beginning because it wasn't passed, but now that we're talking about it coming out, that it automatically is, if we say that we're not going to renew this, that we're against public safety, and that those are where we're saying the cuts should go. I don't think I've heard anybody say that. I've heard people say that about other people, but I've never heard anybody say that. So tonight's vote is not about that. Tonight's vote is about calling things what they are. And if this council finds what they need to and have it in the budget, then that is what we should have. And if that means that we need to take it to our citizens and it costs more, then let's have that conversation. But I heard overwhelmingly from a vote that was taken that the citizens do not want extra fines, fees, and taxes. I've lived up and I've talked to citizens. And by the way, I read what you recommended here as the alternatives. I don't think those are the only alternatives. I think that they're kind of put in there to maybe scare some people that this has to be included. But this shouldn't have been included in the budget in the first place because you don't put in things that you don't know in a balanced budget. And by the way, The last time that we had a strategic planning session, we agreed that we weren't going to take a budget from the year before and be able to change it, because that is what we get is this sort of conversation. We were going to start from zero and put dollars into the right funds on what was the most important and where we needed to be able to do those services. It doesn't seem to me that that's what happened. So again, I'm telling the public, there is not a single person on this council who is against public safety. And anybody who says that is doing what should not be done. And it's trying to build a fake narrative.
Any other comments? Councilman Graham?
Councilor Ruckriegel, it's called math. And that's why I think I have to agree with you, and certainly Councilor Riggenbach, that because it's such a big sum of money that we're talking about here, and what it can do to devastate our city, public safety, that's why I think both the R's here are saying we need to go down to Springfield. Well, why would we need to go down to Springfield if this $2 million is not going to amount to a hill of beans in terms of this city and funding this city? You can't have it both ways. It's math. Now, I'm intrigued by anyone here in this chamber who is ready to provide, because I've heard it all before, some other revenue stream that would replace this one. I'm all ears. And I'm saying that to all of you. You don't like this one? I don't like it either. I don't like taxes either. But it's what we taught the kids at Peoria High School years ago. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Government doesn't run on cotton candy. Our employees go out into the streets in our name. And many of them don't know if they're going to return home to their families. So we had this push to put something on a ballot. Would you support a tax increase to fund public safety pensions? I said it back then, and I'll say it again. The better question might have been, do you favor funding core basic services before giving corporate welfare, such as the amount of money we gave to the Pierre Marquette? Well, we'll see what the answer is. So I'm open, I really am. I'm open-minded, but let's face what we're doing here tonight. We are shooting a $2 million hole in our budget, and we'll have to deal with it in '24. Otherwise, we will hurt public safety. It's just math. And I hope you all can come up with something that's more palatable. Thank you.
I think we have to get entrepreneurial. I think we have to get creative. I think we have to get aggressive and working with Springfield, whether that's, trying to push that amateurization out 20 years. That's a start. That's a start. Yes, Councilman.
Directed to me. Since those comments were directed to me, I feel like I ought to be able to at least address them. I agree. People don't think that Councilman Greb and I agree. We do. Math is math. And by the way, our math hasn't added up for a lot of years, and it's what's created this situation. And we also agree that the values that we sit here are important and they're reflective of our community. But again, I hear, because I wasn't here, and I know most of the council wasn't here when the Pierre Marquette decision was made. We've had to live with that. But to equate the people that if we vote this down, and to tie that in an untrue narrative to the Pierre Marquette, again, just proves the point. When you can't talk about the real subject, you'll talk about anything else to make it look like smoke and mirrors. At the end of the day, there are 9 digits 0 through 9. And they form a lot of numbers. And math is pretty simple. But the other part of that is, and it doesn't take a business guy to tell you this, when there's not much money in the checkbook, you have to live on there. But we have extra revenue sources coming in. And yet, we're sitting here and talking about that if we make a decision, we must be against public safety. Nobody is that way. The fake narratives have got to stop. This is not a vote on the Pierre Marquette. Anybody around to the council who was here at that point can take that on their own subject, but don't label everybody else with that anymore.
Well, I think the name given to this fee was flawed in the beginning to call it the public safety pension fee. I think that was a big mistake. There's no more comments. The motion is to deny. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to add, not that we need a lot of addition here, no matter what we do on this issue or on this budget, we're operating in a system that is doomed to failure. We have to start doing things differently, just to move from year to year to year, tweaking the basic setup is not working. Our city is not growing. Thank goodness it isn't shrinking much. Much of our city is deteriorating. We've got lots of problems, and we just keep doing the same things that don't work. We need some fresh thinking. It's a little off the subject. I apologize, but thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Please cast your ballots. The motion is to deny. Motion is approved with 2 nays, Graham and Jackson. Madam Clerk.
We are at unfinished business. 21-317 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the 2022-2023 Biennial Budget. And on your desk, you have a number of handouts. You have report backs number 4 and number 5. You have a list of motions for consideration. And then you have 2 articles from the S&P Global Ratings, one dated September 12th of 2013 and one dated October 22nd of 2021.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, you have in front of you within report back number 4, Councilwoman Jensen had asked about overtime usage by all departments. That was included in report back 4.1. Report back 4.2, Councilman Ruck-Rigel had asked about what was the breakdown of parcels by council district, their equalized assessed value, and the fees for each of the years and how that was discussed. So we broke that out in report back number 4.2. Councilman Graham had asked a question about when the state project for Western Avenue was starting. That's report back item 4.3. We included the credit analysis from Standard & Poor's from the most recent bond issuance that we just did. And that was included as a separate handout as well. It was summarized. And then we had just a quick identification of proposed budget motions, and I'll talk about those here in just a second. Following that report back that came out on Friday afternoon, we had a request from Councilman Ruck-Rigel to include the City of Peoria's ratings history, which we have included, as well as kind of a breakdown of how S&P puts together, Standard & Poor's puts together their ratings, what are the weighting of the different factors that go into that. And then, as we've previously just discussed in the last item, Councilman Allen asked what options were available if the city council were to not extend the pension fee, and so that was included as well. We do have 5 proposed motions for you. One other item with report back number 5 was Standard & Poor's in 2013 did a nice summary of their how they come up with their ratings methodology, so you can see where we get evaluated by Standard & Poor's when they look at our credit and our credit worthiness. We had 5 motions for you to consider this evening. The first is to include a police multi-purpose vehicle. This would come from proceeds from the asset forfeiture revenues that are dedicated in the general fund, as well as an increase of $195,000 of bond proceeds. The chief has also agreed to reduce the police technology project by $40,000 to balance that out. We've received a $15,000 donation for the fire department for hazmat gear from PMP Fermentation. That's just simply adding that in, the corresponding revenue and expense. We got some clarity back from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity pertaining to the grant that we received from $250,000. They did say that it has to be spent by June 30th, so we've made some recommendations that would allow us to put that towards some street lighting initiatives and have that spent by June 30th. We do need $238,000 to complete the Rock Island Trail, so there's an amendment to include that language there. And then the last item is simply the motion to which includes the option 3 that we talked about with regards to the pension fee that would set aside $1.93 million of fund balance from this year and lower the pension contributions so that we can balance the budget.
Okay.
We'd be happy to answer any questions of council.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just a procedural question. I don't have any intent on derailing things here, but on our agenda it says we have a receive and file. We don't have a motion for that yet. If we did have a motion for that, maybe our parliamentarian can help out here. If we have a motion for that, then can we take these motions one at a time? Or is the proper thing not to do this receive and file now, but to do these particular motions now and then do a receive and file? It's just a procedural question. I don't have a problem. I just want to make sure we're doing things properly.
Well, the way that we counsel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe in the past it has actually been done both ways when it's come to the budget. And looking back at old minutes from budget sessions, there have been instances where the motion to receive and file has been made, and then the proposed recommendations for the budget have individually been listed as motions, and then it's been done in the reverse. So on a standard agenda item where action is being taken, yes, you're absolutely right, Councilman, that we prefer the motion and the second to occur before there is any discussion. However, that is one area where all municipal attorneys will agree. You have to give your client some leeway because it's often the discussion that informs the actual budget or that informs the actual motion that's going to be made. So I think that either would be proper in this particular instance because it is not final action that you are taking. That budget adoption will be your final action.
I'm sorry, what was the last sentence?
The adoption of the budget that will occur at a later date
action.
will be your final action.
Okay, so your recommendation now would be to make a motion to receive and file now or to go with these items first?
I think you could do either. It would be at the pleasure of the council.
You want to make a motion, proceed.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, is that
I
motion?
would move to receive and file.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Jensen. Okay, further discussion, Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. this is some general budget discussion now, correct? Mr. Manager, thank you. Mr. Manager, would you refresh us as to how much we anticipate the general fund balance to grow this year?
In the projected budget that we put together for you, we anticipated the general fund budget to grow a little over $10.8 million is what we were anticipating that it would grow.
And we anticipate using fund balance to balance a 2023 budget, correct?
So in the 2023 budget, if all of the motions are made this evening, we would be drawing down reserves by about $3.886 million in 2023. In 2022, it would be 5.723, and most of those drawdowns would occur where we have large capital balances, roads, for example, where we would be spending those down.
So to Councilman Ruckregel's point about having a balanced budget, is it fair to call the 2023 budget balanced if we're using our rainy day funds for that?
You suspended over $20 million of capital spending last year. That grew your fund balances with the intent of spending those down on capital projects. So I would view that budget as being balanced, and that what you're doing is the prudent approach, which is what we said when times were uncertain, is that we tightened our belts, we didn't spend those dollars. Now we have that opportunity to spend those capital funds and to draw those down. The general fund, which includes our operating budget, if the motions are approved this evening, will be putting money into reserves both in 2022 and in 2023.
So the 5.7 and 3.8 is not general fund reserves. Those are
correct.
Specific capital related.
Those are drawdowns of capital budgets. Those are drawdowns of road funds. Those are drawdowns of the stormwater utility proceeds. Those are drawdowns of sewer funds. It is not general fund dollars.
So if we, with the action of the previous item, then we have the $2 million now. And looking at your options on that, let me make sure I'm on the right page again. If it seems to me that there continues to be a lot of angst as to how to replenish that. And I think Councilman Sear made the comment that perhaps we're looking at it wrong, and that the first thing we look at is how can we raise taxes to replace that, rather than how can we make sure our belt is tightened. I mean, let's face it, with gas prices approaching $4, with the grocery prices at higher levels than we've seen in many years, I think it's only responsible for us as well to make sure that our belts are as tight as they can be, and I'm just trying to process this all together, as this seems to be an evolving document here with the action we took, which obviously the majority of the council agrees, and we don't need more taxes. But then I think that begs the question, and I would ask for this in the form of a report back, with the increase in staffing of 38 recommended in this budget, that was under the assumption that there was going to be a $2 million parcel pension fee. So now that that's not there, I would like to see the specific jobs. I know in the summary of in the budget book it talks about departments, but let's look a little more specific, and if it's in here already, just point me to it. The specific jobs that these 38 positions represent and the costs associated with those. Because the last thing we want to do is bring people on board in 2022 and then in 2024, all of a sudden realize, oops, we've got more issues and we're going to need to look at other ways to make ends meet. So as hard as it sounds, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting to hear people talking about the math from all corners of the horseshoe, if horseshoes have corners, I guess. But we all agree that it comes down to dollars and cents, and without those dollars, we're not going to have. We're clearly going to have a city that's in dire need of further help. So I really want to understand these 38 positions we're adding, what that cost is going to be. I would like a little more, I'm intrigued by option one, to be honest, cut expenses. I mean, if I don't have the money in my personal family budget, I don't go out and get another loan, or I don't keep putting money on my credit card. I look at ways how I can cut it. And it doesn't seem like we've even had that discussion. So I really want to see what the positions are, what this $4 million, you said it would mean that 24 positions would need to remain unfilled. So I would assume that means that would not mean any layoffs. So let's put a little meat on that bone for this councilman. So I would ask that. And then as we wrap our arms around the overtime budgets, which was requested by Councilwoman Jensen, I hearken back, Mr. Manager, our days at the county board when we would have the committee reports and we'd always get the updated budget on a monthly basis, and it would show what the allocation was, what was allotted to the department, what their year-to-date spend is, what percent that is of the total. I think it's more important than ever for us to get that kind of information, especially with the fire department using their existing budget to staff these positions that were just added. So I would request that, and if I need to put that in a form of a motion, I'm happy to do so, but I want to see a monthly report of what their budget is, what their overtime budget is, and how much money is left for the remainder of the year.
I don't think you need a motion for that, Councilman. It's a report back, and the sooner he can, and the whole council can get that information, the better, not next Tuesday. If you can prepare that sooner than later, I think that'll be helpful.
But I would also like to see that on an ongoing basis then, as those positions are there, that we're sure that we're maintaining that balance in the existing allocation, whatever their earmark ends up being for the year. So I think those are the points I had for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I have a different view than Councilman Riggenbach on as far as these options. I think this year, particularly now with the infrastructure bill passing, the amount of money, I think you just said we got $47 million from the government for the American Rescue Act, as well as the Recovery Act. And with the substantial increase that we've had this year in revenues from the state, for a number of years, we did not get our share of the property tax replacement fee or the income tax share. And now with the internet sales tax, I think that option 3, which is recommended by the city manager, is the option that we should pursue. So I'll go ahead and make a motion that the city council, or that the city go with option 3 to deal with the failure of the denial of the extending the property pension fee.
Councilwoman, that motion is actually written out. It's showing as number 5 on the list
Oh,
of
okay,
proposed
I'll read
motions.
it then. Hang on.
Can you read that motion then?
I move to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget to reduce police and fire pension contributions and to set aside $1,930,309 of the 2021 fund balance to fund pension obligations in 2022 and 2023.
Second? Seconded by Councilmember Jackson. Discussion? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to hold off on that motion until we get the report back that our third district councilman asked for. So I will be voting against the motion, not against the spirit of the motion, but I think the information requested will help us with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand the motion. Mr. Manager, did you say a little bit earlier in the meeting that is it even legal for us to make a lower contribution that we're supposed to?
No, you're not making a lower contribution than you're supposed to. You're making a contribution that is above what you're required to make, that's lower than what I originally recommended that you make.
Okay, can you say that again, please?
What this does is it lowers the recommendation that I provided to you in the budget book that was higher than what you're required to make. This lowering this amount is still above what you're required to make.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That sounds great. You know, I owe $400 million on this. I should be paying about $40 million a year, but I'm paying 27. I'll just lower it to 25. That'll take care of my problem, won't it?
Buys us time.
I'm sorry?
It buys us some time.
That's what we said 3 years ago, respectfully, when we passed the partial pension fee. I just don't see how lowering the payment that we know we have to pay to the debt we know we have is wise financial stewardship. It just goes against everything I talk to about all day at my day job. It just seems to not be the financially responsible course that a city that is so proud of the fact that we got our bond rating improved to A+, but I hope all of my colleagues noticed the page 2 or 3, whatever number it is on this. A+ is not good, folks. AAA is where you want to be. A+ is far from being good. So if you looked at any of the information from the manager, that's the pension obligation continues to be the albatross around our neck that the rating companies look at. So we're going to pay less on that one thing that they tell us to focus on, and then we wonder why next time we need to get a loan, our interest rate's going to be higher. So I am definitely not prepared to vote on option 3 tonight. There's more information needed, and I just really caution the council that this is not the time to be making these quick decisions. We just upset the table from the way the manager had prepared it, so we need the time. We need more options. Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, can you talk about if we were to go with motion 5 here, what that will look like to our staffing levels for public safety, since we're going to be now paying a lower we'll be paying the required payment, but lower than what you anticipated for us.
There's the option, the motion that's on the table right now does not adjust any positions in public safety. So there's no change to the recommended staffing levels due to this. So that at this point in time, based upon the recommendations that we made as part of the budget book, this is just one way to do it that doesn't affect staffing. If you look to cut expenses and say that you don't want to follow this option, then we're going to have to look at staffing and looking at reducing the number of positions that we're recommending in the book.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Rodrigo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess on that last question, just to follow up, City Manager, those would be the recommended positions added based on a false assumption of a revenue on a fee, let's call it a tax, because it is in a way, that was not within your purview to do because we had not passed it yet, correct?
No, Councilman, this is the pension fee was separate. It was not part of the general fund. It was separate from the general fund. It is funded in our public safety pension accounts, and that's where those dollars came from.
But again, you're saying the only way, if this thing passes, or if this thing doesn't pass, is that we cut staffing of the recommended, not hired yet, personnel, correct?
So what ends up happening, as I mentioned earlier, where the contributions come from for pensions, they come from property taxes. They come from personal property taxes. They come from the public safety pension fee, which is no longer, and then they also come from a general fund contribution. The action the council just took of not extending the fee means that $2 million is no longer there. So now we're looking at what are the options to fill that void. And
thank you.
There's plausible options that...
No, I think you've answered my question. So because I go and buy a lottery ticket, and I might win on the lottery ticket, I go out and buy something, or say I'm going to buy something, and now I get upset because I can't do that because I didn't win the lottery. That's backwards thinking. On this motion, though, that is on the table today, I would agree we would have to have much more information. Our bond rating, we did go up to an A+, but that's not really where we've been in the past. And when we read the audit reports, when we read the letters from the banks that we tried to get some help from that were local, that knew our situation back last year, and from what we've heard you say as well, is the biggest hill that we have to climb is our pension liability. And it may have started before any of us were here. It may have been when some of us were here, and whether people were in part of that decision or not. But it's because of some non-payment of pension liabilities by others that got us to this point. But we are here now.
Well, I would take issue with the statement of saying that the non-payment of liabilities. I think what we have is a system that is growing too fast for the contributions that we're making. And I would clarify that by saying that. The second thing I would point out in the report back that we provided about the credit history, if you look at the series of downgrades that we've had in our credit rating, and I'll go to this, beginning in 2014 when we had our first credit rating downgrade, Moody's rationale was that we had very weak debt and contingent liabilities position, including underfunded pensions. Standard & Poor's said above average debt burden and unfunded pension liabilities. In October 15, we received a negative outlook because of Caterpillar's restructuring of their workforce here locally. In November of 2016, we had a downgrade that said considerable growth in Peoria's unfunded pension liabilities, as well as continued economic pressures associated with downsizing at Caterpillar. In January 2018, we had a downgrade, and the outlook was actually upgraded at that time, but they did say that it was elevated debt and pension leverage. And then in 2020, when they downgraded us, it was due to COVID. That was a downgrade that many communities faced because of COVID. Now, in this most recent, they upgraded our outlook to stable, and they said one of the reasons for that is they felt that we came out of the pandemic stronger, and they felt that we made the right decisions. So I think as we look at this, this is the fundamental issue, and this is a policy question for council to decide. It's how do you want to pay for your pension costs? And how you pay for that is either by cutting expenses or raising revenues. There's no other way to do it.
You and I agree on that. And our next rating that comes out next year and the following year will be based on decisions that we make tonight. Tonight's decision doesn't affect the rating we have there, but it will affect if it goes back up into a rate which is much more favorable whenever we go into bonds and whenever we have other things that are in front of us. Without more information about how it would affect the budget, because I can't assume from all the additions and deletions that we've done that what this final budget looks like with this. So I can't be supportive of this because we can't just say we're going to automatically cut that as the one option. And I agree with Councilmember Rickenbach. It doesn't move the needle. It's like paying the minimums. Even if you're paying just a little bit more, you never get that credit card debt paid off. Yes, it's a system that we can't control the whole thing of. Yes, we've got to be able to figure out, we've got great local legislators working with them to be able to fix this problem. Other municipalities face it as well. But until we speak up loud enough and to try to fix it, otherwise we can't keep making it worse. And so tonight, without that extra information, I can't vote for this because it's setting a path without having all of the small print that comes with every credit card that nobody reads. That's basically what we're not seeing here. We're not seeing the data, the fine print that we really should know.
Councilmember Jensen?
I don't have a comment.
Oh, I thought you did like that.
No.
Councilmember Graham?
If we are about the business of continuing to cut public safety, which is what we've been doing for a long time, and we're reaping the whirlwind now, we're going to continue to do this until the pension obligation goes away. We're not going to have a city. You have to be able to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. And you can't be a deadbeat parent. You have to pay your bills. You have to pay your bills. I know that seems crazy, but we have to fund our neighborhoods. We have to provide safety. Almost all of the jobs, and I said this earlier and I'll say it again, that we have left in the city are related to public safety, police, fire, public works, and community development, our code enforcement. You look at the devastating fires, the shootings, the streets that aren't being attended to. It just seems to me that we're stuck in a time warp because many of the same arguments that I'm hearing tonight were made before we had the American Rescue Act passed. And I kept suggesting there will be some assistance coming to us to help us with some of our needs. We have a very needy city. And lo and behold, Congress did pass these acts to assist all municipalities. And believe it or not, your constituents, not just mine, they paid federal taxes. The state of Illinois and Peoria deserves its share of money, including from the Hard Infrastructure Act, which was recently passed on a bipartisan basis by our Congress. Yet we sit here and it continues to be, we're going to defund public safety until all the pension obligation problems go away in Springfield. I'm not going to let you do that, because that's what you're arguing night after night after night. If this city capsizes and people continue to want to leave, it's going to affect people who live in the far northern part of the city, who right now are underserved in terms of so many things. It will affect all of us, from the north to the south to the east and the west. Now, I look around the city, and what do I see? I see code enforcement challenge properties. I see devastating fires. I see 30 homicides, many involving our kids. And we're talking now about, could I have a list, Mr. Manager, of positions that we can cut? Like you're going to be able to cut positions that don't go deep into the muscle and bone of public safety? Seriously, it is math. That's just snake oil. And the people of Peoria will remember you for crippling further our neighborhoods, which have the chance now to come back. It's called some breathing room. Some of you all aren't going to give it any breathing room until Springfield solves the pension problem. The manager made a cerebral, intelligent recommendation. And Counselor Jensen is trying to put into place something that would basically allow us to do what he is suggesting. And you all have all these different ideas. Well, we want to know how many positions we can now cut. Really? Are you kidding me? That is insane. Yeah, manager, tell us how many cops you want to cut, how many firefighters, how many code enforcement, how many public works. Let's take that Harvard project that's in here. Let's go down the line of infrastructure projects, because these people are not going to be happy until the Springfield Gordian knot is undone. Thank you. I'm going to support Counselor Jensen's motion.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think that there's one item or set of items that continues to get left out of these discussions. It's either people or kicking the can, but I think we also should be taking a more critical look at our assets and whether or not we can get more life out of them. What are the buildings and equipment that should be replaced or worked on? That's what got us down the path of building a new fire station, was avoiding dumping unnecessary money into buildings that should be torn down. And we need to have more discussion about that. Doesn't just have to be about cutting people. It's how we run our entire organization and where the best utilization of our resources are. The pension fee was a kicking of the can. Past budgets have been a kicking of the can. This motion is a kicking of the can because it just continues to facilitate the death spiral that we've been on for years. The American Cares Act didn't change the conversation because it's one-time money that doesn't pay long-term bills. You can't use that money to say that we're fixed forever. We still have to fix the actual problem, and we need to look deeper into how we run our business and how we run this city and our community and the assets that we have under our ownership. And maybe we don't need to buy some of the vehicles that we need this year. Maybe we need to focus on prioritizing the ones that are critical, like, police equipment. We've spent a whole lot of time talking about everything but police when we've got record number of homicides. So maybe we should start talking about that manpower rather than other manpower. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Ali. Fixing whatever problems we may have is not done by cutting more public safety, cutting fire and police, or any other employees. We're finally have a budget where we can move forward without reducing and cutting those people. We need them. and that is not the way to do it. So that's why this motion and this option, it's viable. It doesn't put us in a position worse than we've been. In fact, we're in a better position than we have been for a number of years. So I hope a majority of the council will support this motion. It's critical for us to move forward. And then next year, we'll work on getting pensions, hopefully at some point, some kind of reform, but as well as other revenue sources, whether, there's a number of other options down the road for us to talk about and look at. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are in a conundrum of trying to balance short-term issues while maintaining the long-term vision of our city. And this is a tough decision. It really is. But I think that it is the best decision that we can make at this time, given all of the circumstances. We are eliminating a fee that many of our citizens overwhelmingly supported that they did not want to pay anymore, while we're able to maintain our staffing levels that many of our citizens want to have. They want police, they want fire, they want public works, they want code enforcement. We have to be able to hire police officers. We have a record number of homicides going on right now. We need firefighters. We just had a horrible fire last week where people had to be relocated out of that building. And I know many people who live in that apartment complex, and many of my constituents have family members that live in that apartment complex. We have deteriorating roads. We have potholes that are the size of the Grand Canyon. We've got work to still be done in the short term. And so I am optimistic about the future of our city, and I do think that this is the best motion for the right time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With all due respect to those who disagree, I feel that this is a short-term fix that buys us further long-term problems, further long-term expenses. We've been doing this for a long time, and the problems have not gotten any better. We're on a model that Detroit pioneered for us. Okay, we're more and more dependent upon outside governments. We absolutely depend on, the feds have to help us. They have to do this. They have to do that. The state has to do this. That. Who's in charge here? We're in charge. We have to hope for the best and expect the worst and plan that way. This puts us further in the hole down the road, so we get it off our desks this year, and it comes back to bite. But the bite is bigger. I would ask all of you that participated in Councilman Ruckregel's hearkening back to the last way we took care of the budget. I'd ask you to remember the bottom priority in all the staff meetings that we had and all the public meetings that we had that we have not acted on and that costs us a fortune. I hope we will defeat this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have this just does not sit well with me that we're making a decision already, once again, without having a full discussion about it. This is exactly the fear that many of us had when we received the rescue funds, that we're going to start spending money without looking at the long-term consequences. Folks, to wait till next week to get a little more information isn't saying option 3 might end up being the right choice. But give us the chance to get our questions answered. Why do we think by asking, do we need to increase staffing by 38 positions means I'm against public safety? That is such a disingenuous representation of how I've tried to operate. And I'm just really tired of going to these draconian means to make a point. Without spending this money wisely, the future of our city could be bleak. But I agree with Councilman Allen. The future is good for Peoria. We have a lot of positives going on. We just need to be the good stewards of the money that we've been given. To expect us to make a decision. I got this, 2:30, 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I want to understand what the repercussions of paying near the minimum on the pension is going to mean for the long term. Give me the respect to do my due diligence. That's all I'm asking. That's all we're asking. We don't need to make this tonight. We don't have to pass the budget next week. We'd all like to get it done before Thanksgiving, but we've got time. We've got time to make sure we're doing it right so that we're not going to be chasing people away from our city. There's so much to be talked about here in a responsible manner that's going to put us on the foundation and on the pathway that all of our kids are going to want to stay in Peoria. So please vote this down. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure we're looking at all of the facts and not just the ones that got put in front of us at 3 o'clock, whatever, this afternoon. I'm sure there's more to the story. Let's just take a step back and take a deep breath and give ourselves that opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Jensen?
I move to call the question, or ask to call the question.
Just want to say first that we have a broken pension system throughout the state of Illinois. We're not the only ones that are experiencing these huge liabilities. Under the current structure that we have, we'll never catch up. Not in our lifetimes. We'll never catch up. So the only choices that we have right now, until we can work with Springfield to fix the broken system, is those Band-Aid approaches, those short-term strategies, because we're in a survival mode. We still have to support our community. We hired a city manager who runs the operations of the city. His recommendation is that we balance the budget, that we reduce the fire and pension contributions to not an illegal rate. It's legal. We're paying above what's required to be paid with this motion. So anyway, question has been called. Please cast your ballots. Motion fails with 5 yeas, 5 nays, and 1 abstention. Valpula. So,
Madam Mayor, as a point of order, I'm not sure that Councilman Valpula can abstain from that vote. There's been no recognition of why he would need to.
Can you repeat that?
I'm not sure that Councilman Valpula can abstain from the vote. There's been no recognition of why he may need to do that.
Okay. Councilman?
Madam Mayor, for me, it's so confusing. I heard both sides of the discussion, but for me to make an informed decision, I really wanted to understand the base of it, and I don't want to be, taking. I didn't know how to explain my thought I really am confused, because at 2:30 or 3 o'clock I got the same thing, and now I am supposed to vote, and I don't know what I'm voting for. So I just need some time to really think about it. So that I didn't know that was one of the motions, so I didn't know how to express my thoughts, so that's why I wanted to abstain. Because it's hard for me to understand where we are going, not knowing the base of it. For example, maybe the option 1 is right. I don't know. Option 2 is right. I don't know. Option 3. We keep on discussing. We keep on looking at the pros and cons of it. But for me to really understand why I am voting, I really need some input into these things. And nothing was given from any side. So I didn't know how to make this motion. So that's the reason I wanted to abstain or take some time on that. I would really appreciate if we can defer this. I don't know if there is a chance that we can defer to really understand. I may come out in any way, but I just wanted to take some time to understand. Really, it can be forced for me, because I got an email at 3:30. I didn't even look at it, and now I have to vote. I just listened to everybody, and I have to vote on that. It's hard. So I was wondering that if we could defer it to next week and see if, let's go by the merit. But I just wanted some time. I didn't know, I didn't know the procedures, so I just.
I understand, Councilman, but that's not the motion. The motion is not to defer to next week.
That's what if I were to make a motion, I would want to make a motion, unless somebody agrees with me.
Council, is he able to abstain based upon those reasons?
I'm not sure that our council rules allow for sort of lack of information being a basis to abstain. However, this is a recommendation, so if an abstention in this particular case could be left on the record and it would be considered a negative vote, however.
Can you repeat it again?
Sure. In this particular case, final action is not required. These are recommendations to the city manager. So this is an instance where a supermajority is not required. You could leave the abstention on the record. However, it should be noted that votes that are abstentions are generally counted as negative votes.
Okay, so this is not considered final action. Final action comes when we approve the budget.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Just wait a minute. Councilmember Jensen?
Legally, I don't think a elected official is allowed to abstain for that reason. For the reason that was articulated tonight.
That's a good question. I'm looking at Council Rule 19. And so unless the clerk has something more recent than what I have, I will read it for the whole body. All members of the council, including the mayor, shall cast either a yea or nay vote or abstain on all matters duly called for a vote. A present or past vote shall be considered an abstention. An abstention shall not be considered as a vote on the question. In no event, however, shall any ordinance, resolution, or motion requiring a supermajority vote to be adopted without the affirmative vote of the majority of the council members then holding office, including the mayor. So while I would agree that Robert's Rules of Orders wouldn't normally consider lack of information or lack of preparation time a proper basis to abstain, again, unless the city clerk has a more recent rule, I believe that's the rule that you have adopted for abstentions.
Okay, thank you.
You have more to say?
I don't know if it's appropriate since we already voted, it's too late to do a substitute motion to defer based on what just transpired, I guess.
You could make a motion to reconsider because we're at the same meeting and then do a motion to defer the item.
I don't know at this point if, can you repeat what you said about it not being final action since it's just a recommendation? What you explained a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay, thank you. These are recommendations to the city manager, and it is the final budget vote that will come back to you. That is the final action.
Okay, then I'm okay with leaving it as it is.
You're what?
I'm okay with leaving it as it is.
Okay, so this motion has been acted on. Are you saying that it can remain with the abstention? Is that your determination?
I don't have the luxury of having the municipal code in front of me, but according to your council rules, it does appear that the abstention can stand.
Can stay?
Yes.
Okay, motion fails. 5 yeas, 5 nays, 1 abstention. Member Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like our council to look into that. That's not how I have read the rules of the game as far as this council is concerned. The reasons for abstention on any vote are spelled out. They are spelled out, and I'm very sympathetic.
You've got to vote.
I'm very sympathetic with Councilman Karen, but the rules are the rules, and I don't think the rules allow for this. I guess we're going to do it. We've been doing a lot of stuff that we're not supposed to do lately, but I don't think he can legally abstain. I do understand his reasons. I think we all have those reasons, but we're elected to cut through and vote. I think if we can all vote, or if we can all abstain on items that are not final items, we'd be abstaining all day long around here. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councilman, I would agree. We generally only have abstentions when there is a conflict of interest. But again, unless the clerk has something more recent, Ordinance 16142, as adopted by the council, did have a specific rule as to abstentions.
Did this qualify?
No, sir, I read the whole thing that it could stand. I read the language verbatim to you.
Didn't hear that in the language, but all right.
Can you read that language again, Council?
Sure. In Ordinance 16142, as was adopted by the council on June 5th of 2007, voting procedures in number 19 states, all members of the council, including the mayor, shall cast either a yea or nay vote or abstain on all matters duly calling for a vote. A present or past vote shall be considered an abstention. An abstention shall not be considered as a vote on a question. In no event, however, shall any ordinance, resolution, or motion requiring a supermajority vote be adopted without the affirmative votes of a majority of the council members then holding office, including the mayor.
But what are the rules for abstentions? You said abstentions are legal. What are the rules for abstentions? You didn't read the rules for the abstentions. You just said abstentions can occur. Madam Mayor, I'll drop it. I'll drop it. We'll move on.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification. So essentially, this motion has failed, and so if we are to do a motion, if we were to have a motion to reconsider this, would the prevailing side have to bring this forward to be reconsidered for next week? Or essentially, since this is a proposal, a new motion could be technically made to bring this back to the floor for next week? I'm just trying to get some clarity.
Good question.
I believe as a recommendation, a new motion could be brought back to the floor. This is not a final action item.
I would like to make a motion to bring back motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget to reduce police and fire pension contributions and set aside $1,930,309 of the 2021 fund balance to fund pension obligations in 2022 and 2023 to next Tuesday's meeting.
There's a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilwoman Jackson. Councilmember Orler?
I'd like some clarification on the vote that just occurred and the legality of it. Or essentially the motion that just occurred and the legality of voting on it. I mean, do we, anytime we can't pass something, we just make another motion to keep trying to bring it back till we do, or how's this supposed to work?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the question? I was trying to find the municipal code section on abstentions.
I'd like some clarification on the legality of this motion that is currently occurring, because it seems to me like an issue that if we just voted and something failed, we shouldn't be turning right around and re-voting to do something different with a failed motion. Essentially, then you would just, in perpetuity, continue to put it back on. Well, it didn't pass, so let's try it again. Let's try it again.
Sure, and that's an excellent point, and generally I would agree with that. But again, I will have to apologize and have to ask the clerk to read the motion back. I was trying to find something in the municipal code, so I was not able to hear all of Councilman Allen's motion.
Sure. So Councilmember Allen requested a motion to reconsider to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget to reduce police and fire pension contributions and set aside $1,930,309 of 2021 fund balance to pension fund obligations in 2022 and 2023. Is that correct?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilman Euler, if we were voting on the final budget and that matter were to be strucken down, for example, and then there was immediately a motion that would require something about it to be brought back to the floor, I would agree with you wholeheartedly that that would not be, when there's a final action item, that would not be proper. Recommendations leading into the proposed budget have, I believe, been handled this way in the past. If I recall correctly, I think the fire department staffing or budgeting issue may have been one of those subjects that was originally, to be honest, I'm sorry, I don't necessarily recall if it originally passed and then there was a second motion where it failed, or it was vice versa, but this has been the council's process in the past for budget discussion items only, to my knowledge.
Say, Councilman Euler?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Jensen?
I had my light on but I don't want to belabor it, but on the whole issue about whether Councilman Velpula can abstain or not, I mean, that's not based on our council rules, that's based on Robert's Rules of Order, correct? Which says that you have to cite the reason, and there's only certain reasons that you can abstain from a vote for, like if you have a conflict of interest.
Correct, and I'm desperately trying to find out if there is a contrary answer to what is listed in your council rules.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, I know Councilman Kelly was trying to get there, but I believe that was what he was looking for, and that's where it states what the rules are on abstaining. And without it right in front of me, you have to cite a reason, and there's specific reasons that are permitted for abstentions, mostly if there's a conflict of interest. And I think Corporation Counsel's looking right now. I want to belabor that, but right on before the motion was made.
Councilmember Graham?
First of all, Corporation Counsel, on this particular item, is this requiring a supermajority?
Not at this point, sir, no.
Not at this point, okay. Now, what we had was a tie vote, which means it fails. We can argue about the abstention from now until whenever. However, I think Councilor Velpio has made it very clear that he doesn't feel that he's prepared to vote on this tonight. Probably we don't want him to if he's not sure what the correct course would be for his constituents. The problem that I have with a motion to reconsider is it assumes that there's a prevailing side. In a tie vote, there is no prevailing side. So as much as, I would like to see a motion to reconsider, I think the motion would need to be made differently, maybe changing the dollar amount or whatever, so that we're voting on something else other than precisely what's in the motion. So I would encourage everybody to just relax. Let's let the manager come back, tell us what the 37 positions, was it 37, Mr. Manager? 38, with specificity. Gee, I can't even talk anymore. Well, I can.
Yeah, you can.
Know that. But anyway, so that we can have all the facts and brutal facts when we're talking 38 positions and go forward, because we can bring this back. It doesn't have to be precisely this figure, and we would have a different motion. Because there is no prevailing side when there's a tie. So we can't have a motion to reconsider when there's not a prevailing side. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. See, Councilman Graben, I agree again. I think the whole reason the abstention was based on the ask for more information, if I'm hearing him correctly, and I don't want to speak for him. So let's simply, I don't think we need to reconsider. I think we can bring the same exact thing back next week, since these are just recommendations. So let's get that additional information, thank you very much, and have that discussion when everybody has had more than a couple hours to look at it. Like I said, I'm not ruling that off my choice of options right now, but I just need to make sure that I have my arms wrapped around the facts. So,
Council, can you confirm that this can be brought back next week without a motion to reconsider?
Again, in the past, the council has done this exact action under the budget discussion. This is not a final action item, so I see nothing that would prohibit it from coming back.
Okay. Councilmember Allen, would you want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I definitely don't have a problem with doing it. I just want to clarify the reason why I made that motion is because it was stated that his abstention was a negative vote, meaning he went with, in the other 5 votes who voted against it. In my thought process, that means they are all nays, because that is now a negative vote, which meaning that it would be part of the prevailing side. So that was my thought process of making that motion to reconsider, but I will make a motion to withdraw my motion. I said it's getting wild tonight. So.
His motion is withdrawn. Okay. All right, we have some other possible motions out there. Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I make a motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-23 biennial budget for an additional $345,750 for a police multi-purpose response and rescue vehicle, paid with an increase in bond proceeds of $195,750, asset forfeiture revenue of $110,000, and a reduction of the police technology project by $40,000.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget for an additional $15,000 donation from PMP Fermentation and the corresponding expense for the purchase of hazmat equipment and gear.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any comments or questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend the City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget to remove the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity grant from the general fund and budget the $250,000 grant in the capital fund, reduce $50,000 of staffing expenses for the mayor's youth group from the general fund, and increase the smart streetlight pilot project by $250,000.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Questions? Councilmember Graham?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I make a motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-23 biannual budget for an additional $238,000 for the completion of the Rock Island Trail from Park to Harvard. And I would ask the city manager discuss, just in light of the conversations we've had tonight, a little bit about where this dollars would be coming from, so that for our public listening, it would not be confused with personnel dollars. Just for clarity with our conversations here, out of respect for the earlier conversations.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, these dollars would come from the local motor fuel tax fund that would pay for these improvements. This is the gap that we have to complete this project. Thank you.
I need a second to that motion, seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any other questions? Councilmember Graham?
I'm always interested in helping my 3rd district counselor with infrastructure. It costs money, but we need to do it, even though the pension problem isn't fixed. So I'm going to be happily supporting this. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Now, I know Councilmember Riggenbach said we don't have to pass the budget next week, but I sure hope that we do. Next week is November 16th. It would be nice to wrap up before Thanksgiving. Of course, we do have to resolve all of our issues and feel comfortable with the budget as well. Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have another motion. Motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-23 biennial budget to set aside $250,000 per year, 2022 and 2023 respectively, into restricted funding to be available should the council decide to pursue due diligence of the waterworks.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Any questions? Yeah, I would like for it to be. Can you repeat the motion, Councilman
Yes, yes.
Euler?
Motion to amend the proposed City of Peoria 2022-2023 biennial budget to set aside $250,000 each year for years 2022 and 2023 into restricted funds to be available should the council decide to pursue due diligence of the waterworks.
Available to the water. What was the last words?
To pursue due diligence of the waterworks should the council decide to pursue due diligence of the waterworks. And for clarification, that would just be setting money aside. That's not to pursue it. It's not to make a decision to pursue it. It's just setting the funding mechanism aside should the council decide to pursue it at that time and releasing it to the general fund should they not.
Okay. Councilmember Jensen.
I just have a couple questions, I think, for the city manager. Will you remind us what the time frame is when the option is up, when we would have to?
I honestly don't recall right now, so I'd have to go back and take a look at what the time frame is. I believe it would probably be within that. I think it may be 2023 that we have to come back and make that decision. I don't recall offhand when that date is, but it seems like every 5 years that would be when it would be. So.
And then my second question: if the motion were to pass, and money's put aside, and then what if the council doesn't take action? Either doesn't, pursue due diligence, then what happens with that money?
Right. I mean, I think what I think what I heard the motion saying is that we're segregating these funds. Should the council decide to pursue it, the dollars would be there. If the council doesn't, those dollars would then be released for other purposes.
Would the council, if they wanted to release that money, they would need a 2/3 majority because it would require a budget amendment?
Well, in this instance, since there's no appropriation that would be tied to what Councilman Euler's motion was, this would be setting aside money in fund balance. So you would still have to have a motion to appropriate the funds at some point in time in the future, whether that's in the budget process like now or after the budget was adopted. So that would require that action of the council to take that to go forward. And I think that's consistent with the motion that Councilman Euler just made, that should council decide to do that, that would be the time you would come forward with that piece.
So I just want to make sure if the council decided to pursue due diligence and to use that money, would that then also require a 2/3 majority to appropriate the money? It's already set aside?
It's a timing issue. If it's during this budget process, when you're preparing a budget for the upcoming calendar year, that would just simply require a simple majority vote.
Okay.
If you're doing it after the budget has been adopted and you want to amend the budget to increase the spending authority during the fiscal year that you're operating in, that requires a 2/3 a supermajority vote of the city council to do that.
But if the money is already set aside,
even if the money is already set aside, because you're not appropriating those dollars, what we're doing is you're setting aside reserves and fund balance. So those are fund balances that we would be holding in reserve, basically saying they can't be spent. They just have to be set aside for this purpose. And that once council comes back, so if, let's say this is in 2022, in July of 2022, since you're in the middle of a fiscal year, you would require a supermajority vote to pull those monies out of fund balance and spend them.
even though they were set aside for that purpose?
No, they're set aside for that purpose. Because all you're doing is reserving those. You have no appropriation authority. You're not setting up any budget authority with the motion that Councilman Euler just made.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodrigo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things that has always kind of consternated our community is whenever this conversation comes up is where the money is coming from. And the last time that this subject sort of came to the council, one of the things that was discussed pretty heavily was the fact that the city would plan ahead and put some dollars maybe aside so that if and when that discussion ever came up and that the money would be coming from the citizens who have decided at that point that they would maybe want to do the due diligence. And from the motion that I heard, and I'm going to look for clarification here by either a nod or a wave, is I've not heard a motion for due diligence and I've not heard a time frame. And so this money might sit there for 5 years. It could sit there for 25 years. But it, I think, takes away that, idea of where's the money going to come from? Does it come from X? Does it come from Y? What stipulations does it have? And it's something that was talked about several years ago. Also, I think, and I'm looking at the city manager, if I remember right, while the franchise fee itself comes up every 5 years, I think, for determination, there's not a date on the time frame on when the due diligence period could start. Is that right? I think.
No, there are specific time frames of when we would have to exercise and take action. I just don't remember offhand what those dates are. We can get those in a report back to council so that we can get you that information.
And I don't think that's the conversation tonight is, are we buying a water company or even due diligence? I think what it is from what I heard, and I'm looking here, it's to set aside dollars, given the fact that it would ever be decided, but also, too, that those dollars could eventually be moved over to somewhere else if it was not needed by this council, by future councils. And therefore, I think that it probably has some merit for discussion to be able to sit here and can we put those dollars aside, which takes away the conversation of outside money coming in and all of a sudden that be the reason we decide to do it or not to do it. And it allows the council to decide to do it or not to do it, to proceed, to not proceed, based on whatever our facts are and our decisions are versus what others outside of this room may sort of push in front of us or not push in front of us. So it might seem strange that I am supporting this tonight, I think, from some people who are going, wait a minute. But I think that it also adds a lot of clarity to our conversations in the future about if this is something that we do. So in the understanding that this would go into a placeholder and that it may never be used and called upon, and it could always be resourced differently, or there may be future councils that decide to put it in the budget, and therefore it would pass with the budget that would be there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome.
I appreciate Councilman Euler's wording of this. He and I traditionally have disagreed on this topic, and I think this is a good placeholder or set aside, as he said. Councilman Ruckriegel brought up a great point. Last time the city took outside money from some benevolent organization that wanted to pay for the due diligence. They gave us $1 million. Since they didn't get the desired outcome, we ended up paying $2 million back to them. So with that background, I've been very leery about accepting those offers in the past. So let me be clear, I'm not supporting due diligence at this time. I'm not supporting anything beyond setting money aside for a future council to make that decision.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, what is the estimated fee to do the due diligence? I've heard $750,000. Could you provide a general estimate?
it's hard to estimate. I think we've had estimates of $500,000 in the past. We've had estimates that have been higher than that. I think it's also going to depend on the scope of the questions that you want to explore, as well as the process that we'll have to use. So we'll dust everything off and send that out to you so you can take a look at what we've had in the past.
And then the money that is being proposed right now is going to be out of our 2022 and 2023 general fund.
Yeah. So what we would do here is we would designate this fund balance for this purpose. So as our audit is completed, you would see that those dollars would be listed as fund balances that have been designated and set aside for this specific purpose. It just simply means that when we calculate every year what our unrestricted fund balance is at year end, this 250 and then 250 again would be set aside as designated fund balance for this specific purpose.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little afraid of the optics of this, but I'll marinate on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just want to confirm Councilman Ruckriegel's questions and his assertion, as well as Councilman Riggenbach, that yes, this is not an advocacy for due diligence or for buying the waterworks. It's just to do what we said we were going to do 2 years ago and never did, which was put our own money aside should that decision be made in the future to proceed with it and not have to rely on subsidy from outside entity, but have it set aside for our potential use should we, or whatever council it is at that time, make that call. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Graham.
Manager, I believe the franchise agreement's up for renewal in 23. Can you confirm that?
I will. I don't know offhand, but I think it is 23. I think that it, just trying to recollect when that is in my brain, and I don't have it at my fingertips right now. So,
okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'm not opposed to this motion, but I'm not prepared to vote on it tonight with us not knowing which option we're going to pursue now that we haven't approved the pension fee. So a couple of the options are on there are to cut a lot of positions. I think it would be irresponsible for us if the majority of the council goes with one of these other options, which will require reductions in staff, to put $250,000 aside for something that we might do someday. So it's not that I'm opposed to it, but I can't, in good conscience, vote for that tonight. I don't know if the maker of the motion would be willing to defer, or we'll just wait and see if it's just a recommendation. But I can't vote for it tonight until we know which option we're going to pursue now that we have not extended the pension fee. Thank you.
Well, this is the first that I've heard of the motion, so I'm not ready to jump on board. I just would have to think about, Councilman Allen talked about the optics of what message this might send. But again, it's brand new, so if there's no more discussion, please cast your ballots. Motion passes 6 yeas, 5 noes. Floor is still open for motions or requests for report backs. Councilmember Kelly.
I'd like to move to receive and file.
I thought you did.
I didn't think so. Did I?
Yes.
Yeah,
Pardon me, Madam Mayor.
yeah, okay. Right, we all forgot. There was a motion, Councilmember Ruckriegel had made earlier. Madam Clerk, is that a motion that was made earlier by Councilmember Ruckriegel?
I do not have a pending motion at this time, other than the receive and file.
Okay. What, the rock, right, there was, did we get a second on that? We did, okay, great. Yes, Councilman Seer, thank you, just double checking. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to mention it, but a couple council members have talked about President Biden's infrastructure bill. And I think in a conversation I had with the city manager, with anticipation of that coming down the pipeline, and we're not sure when, I had asked what we were doing in terms of having a proposal prepared. And I would like to know, Mr. Manager, if we could, what are we doing? Do we have a list of projects that we would submit to the federal government that could potentially qualify for the federal infrastructure bill under?
We have communicated with our legislative delegation that as they hear how the federal government is going to roll out funding to the local levels, that they share that information with us. At this point in time, we don't know how they're planning to roll those dollars out. You have a series of projects that are in this capital budget that I would look to fund first. And that would be these projects that are in here that can free up other dollars that we may have, that we can look at those projects that are in this budget first. Following that, we have a series of projects that we're waiting on hearing back from the state government, how those projects are going to be funded. We're probably going to need matching funds for some of those projects as well. And there's some pretty sizable projects in that list. So we want to make sure that we have those prepared and ready to go. That includes Main Street is a good example of that. MacArthur Highway is another example of a project that is a sizable $10 million grant from the state that we don't know how we'll match that yet. So those are pieces that we have to look at as we see what how the money rolls out. If the money rolls out as it traditionally has, it'll probably run through the PUATS committee and through the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, and it may not move very quickly. So that's something we need to just wait and see how the federal government looks at rolling out those dollars.
So are we potentially, in terms of a timeline, talking maybe, a couple years before, or a year before we know something? Or?
I hope it's not a year. I hope that they move with all due speed to get us out more information. And as soon as we hear, we'll make sure that we share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, IDOT representative expects that the annual allocations may go out within the next 6 months, is what I read today.
Thank you.
Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Calling the question on Mr. Kelly's motion, please.
Okay, Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have my light on, Councilman. One of the items in the budget.
Council?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
He called for the question. The receive and file. No, we never voted on it. Cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Riggenbach. Madam Clerk?
We are at additional unfinished business. Oh, I'm sorry. No, 21-327 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to approve a resolution approving an annexation agreement for property identified as parcel identification number 0919100001 with a temporary address of 12426 North Klein Road, located west of Allen Road, east of Klein Road, south of Cedar Hills Road, and north of property identified as parcel identification number 0919100002, Dunlap, Illinois.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an annexation. This is a property that is on Cedar Hills Drive that's just west of Greenview Nursery. They wanted to split the property into 3 10-acre lots. If this split would go forward, for any other additional splits, they would have to hook up to public sewer and public water. Again, as we've discussed previously, the issue here is we may never, over the next 20 years, be adjacent to this property, but if it is, this is the reason why, and it's inside of our extraterritorial jurisdiction, and that's the reason why they were open to this annexation.
Okay. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Seconded by Councilmember Euler. Member Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, in a situation like this where someone wants to subdivide enough that it requires sewer and water, the expense from wherever the sewer and water connection is going to be to their property is borne by the petitioner. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm not convinced we need more streets and whatnot to take care of, so I will be in the minority voting against this. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Greb?
Thank you, Mayor. Manager Urick, the previous councils, going back into the 90s, going back to Mayor Maloof, for example, pursued strategies involving growth cells. Can you compare and contrast this recommendation to a growth cell strategy? And then I'll comment on what I think of the strategy that past councils have used.
So within the growth cell strategies, the council defined a geographic area that they were looking to grow. And in that area, the city worked with the sanitary district to finance the sewer improvements in that specific geographic area. We have we have 3 growth cells that were discussed as part of that. The last being that the city acted on, well, growth cell 2, for example, is inside of Route 6. That's the unincorporated area that's inside of Route 6 that is not part of the city currently. We have funded the sewer capacity in that area. As future development may occur, then that city would, or that property would get annexed into the city. The second growth cell 1A was further north, and that was the most recent activity that we've seen. Notably, the streets there would be Wilhelm Road and up to Hickory Grove Road. Those would be some of the areas where we've seen the growth in that part of northwest Peoria. And that was, again, we funded sewer improvements in order to finance that growth. In this specific instance, this is a 30-acre parcel of property that the property owners wanted to subdivide. that is outside of those areas, but is still within our 1.5 mile territorial jurisdiction. So in order to consent to that, they agreed to sign an annexation agreement so that they could split their lots into 3 10-acre lots. And then they also agreed that if at any point in time in the future they were to subdivide again, they would hook up all of those lots to private sewer or to public sewer and public water.
I think, too, if you take a look at the pursuit of the growth cell strategies and the implementation of them, there might be some folks who would disagree, but I would think they would be wrong. I think ultimately those areas that we have annexed have ended up being a net plus for us revenue-wise, even though we have to build firehouses and provide police protection, all the rest of what needs to be done. We don't need to look very far to see exactly what happens when a city fails to grow in a smart way. A number of years ago, a very bad decision was made to limit District 150's ability, after the Richwoods Township annexation, to expand. And that's why you have Dunlap School District now almost half the size of Peoria Public Schools. I commend Councilor Sear for seeing what this can do not only for District 5, but for the entire city. And what diminishes any part of our city or what helps any part of our city helps all of it. And I've gotten into some debates with some folks who don't see it that way, but I think ultimately the growth cell strategies under Mayor Maloof and previous councils worked and redounded to the benefit of our citizens with real estate taxes that are being brought in, et cetera, to fund the older neighborhoods, the legacy neighborhoods south of Ward Drive. So enthusiastic to have you back, and I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, seeing no more comments, please cast your ballots. Motion passes, 1 nay. Kelly. Is there any other unfinished business? Madam Clerk.
We are at new business.
Is there any new business? Member Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of announcements for CityLink. The first is that tomorrow, Thursday, on November 11th, CityLink will offer free rides for veterans in honor of Veterans Day. And then CityLink is also working on a new plan with new routes. And although I think their public meetings have finished, you can still provide public input to what the new proposed route network will be up until December 1st through citylinkonthemove.org, or you can go to www.surveymonkey.com/r/CityLink 2021. That survey will be available for people to complete up until December 1st. And it should also show on their website what the proposed route network will be for the next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As a follow-up to a conversation I had with the city manager before the meeting, with the growing number of legal challenges around this council, it seems we've had the last few months, and feedback that I've gotten related to things getting hung up, coming through legal, and the amount of staffing that we have there, I'd really like to see, it brings to mind the fact that, we've had this corporation counsel position unfilled for give or take 2 years now. I'd really like to see some resolution to that over the next 90 days. And so at the next meeting, I would like to see some feedback on what filling that position with an outside legal counsel would look like, or what other options are on the table surrounding that, so that we can have those conversations and figure out what we need to do to bring resolution. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Seer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question for our city manager. I talked to you today about the audit. I've been told there's no question that we're asked since we got the audit. I just want to have one question. The recommendation on page 10, and I'm sure you don't have your booklet with you, but one of the problems, we lost about 85 years of experience in the finance department. And it talks about here needed to have proper internal control over our accounting system. I'm sure you read this. Any comments on this, please?
We have gone through the hiring process and have hired additional accounting help in the finance department. And I believe that the finance director would be happy to have a conversation with you and talk about the steps that we're taking to ensure that we have appropriate internal controls within the department.
Great. Thank you very much. Looking forward to that conversation. Just one comment, Madam Mayor. First of all, I just want to tell you that you are the mayor of an incredible city. I've been going through some hard time the last 30 days, and I want to tell you the support from this horseshoe, from our constituent, from President of Homeowner Association, and everybody around the city of Peoria has been outstanding. And meetings like tonight and many meetings over the last 5 years I've been here, we see sometimes the worst. But I just want to tell you that I've seen the best of Peoria for the last 30 days, and the support has been incredible. So thank you and for all the support from everybody, and thank you for all your prayers.
Thank you. God bless. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I hate to go down a negative rabbit hole after Councilman Sears' remarks, and I'm so glad to have you here today, sir, and continued prayers and condolences to your family. Right now, our city is in turmoil right now. The last couple of days, we've had additional homicides, ages 15 and 16 respectively, and we need to start thinking about some solutions. I know there are some things on the horizon right now, and it's going to take an entire community to rally, but I would like to challenge us around the horseshoe to be thinking how we can support, the already SNET that Mayor Ali is championing there, but then also to be thinking of some other innovative things out the box of how we can support our police department and how we're going to really get our hands on this, because this is getting out of control. It really is. And so I just want to put a public plea out there. If you have solutions, if you have resolutions, things that you've seen model in different cities, because elected officials, we can only do the best we can, but this is a community problem. This is not just a horseshoe problem. This is not just a chief of police, Peoria Police Department problem. This is a city of Peoria problem, and we need city of Peoria solutions. So I just wanted to say that just because, it's starting to really get out of control. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would agree with Councilmember Allen that it's definitely something that we need to be able to make sure that we're always aware of. And thank you this morning for your email to the council on some of the items that you're working on as well. We definitely appreciate that, and good information in there as well.
Thank you.
And I had asked, interestingly enough, about that time that email came through, if our police chief could compile some numbers for us. And I know he's had a busy day. Our department is doing amazing work. They're doing a lot of work. And he had a press conference earlier today, but I had asked if he could come and share some of the numbers and a little bit of what and he sees that he would like to maybe take as the next step forward. But one of the things that he was able to pull for me as well was the number of gunshots individually that we're hitting record year on homicides. And for all of us around the council that get our daily briefings in the morning, we see the gunshots, a lot of them that are recognized by spot shotter. And I think a lot of us are kind of concerned on the ones that don't even get called in. If it wasn't for spot shot, they may not get reported. But I think to update the public on kind of where we are statistics-wise, and then kind of what he sees as a little bit planned for going forward. But again, thank you also for your work on this and for your update that you sent this morning.
Thank you, Councilman. Chief?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Yeah, right now the city of Peoria is dealing with record numbers of homicides this year. We have 30 homicides. I'm going to give you just some raw numbers, but before I do that, I heard some comments. You know, I want to thank the city council and the mayor for your support at the police department, whether it's for technology, some things that went today. You have been very supportive, and I truly appreciate that, and the members of the police department do also. So thank you on that end. So I'm going to give you some raw numbers. We've had 27 homicides related to shootings out of the 30. 5 of those were juveniles. The shot spotter alerts that we've had are 1,495 shot spotter alerts. Out of those shot spotter alerts, we've had 114 shooting incidents. That means a bullet touched somebody's skin. We count graze wounds, so if it touched skin, that's part of those numbers, 114. So sometimes there's multiple victims for an incident, so gunshot victims that we've had, again, that includes graze wounds, 134, and rounds fired, as of this morning, was 5,640 rounds. That is a big number. Now, you see a difference here in these numbers when we say shot spotter alerts, and those number and the amount of victims that we've had. Kind of just tells you that we're not seeing a lot of these shot spotter alerts. We may not have evidence or a witness that calls them in. And so the questions often asked, what's the value of shot spotter? I can tell you that one of the last homicides we've had, nobody called it in. The shot spotter alerted, we found the subject or the victim. So if shot spotter finds somebody for us, or we're able to be directed into an area where we can find somebody, hopefully we can find them and they're able to save their life. So there's value there, and it often gets us in an area that we need to be, right? 16 of the 30 homicides are closed with either an arrest or cleared exceptional, which means it was a justified homicide or an accidental shooting or other. I told you there were 27 of the homicides were by gunfire. 13 were adults. Of the arrests made, 1 was a juvenile. So we've had multiple arrests. Of the 12 closed homicides, we've also had multiple arrests. There's often multiple subjects, multiple suspects that are involved. So we've had multiple arrests in some cases. I can tell you that I get asked all the time, well, how do you feel about this? It's very stressful. We have emotions as well at the police department, and so when officers are walking up onto a scene, like yesterday, where we have a child that's on the street, but we had an officer that was right around the corner. We're obviously in the area. We're patrolling these hot areas that we know we see a tendency to see other crimes there. We're in those areas, and it's hard for our officers to see that and deal with that. They come in every day to do their job as best as they can. I appreciate the support with the technology and equipment that we need to go out there and do our job. So that's where I think, in the horseshoe, where you guys are supporting us. We are doing some things. There's some things that we're doing kind of quietly that we're not promoting out to the press because we don't want to make a show of it. But we are talking to, victims that are affiliated to the survivors of these shootings, and we're having dialogues with them privately and kind of doing some things behind the scene to really get some resources to those and support them so then they can support us and let them get the help that they need so then we can do some things with them. We have TIP 411 that's will be out hopefully in the next week. We had to do some things with the Apple developer to get that up and running. We'll be able to communicate anonymously with tipsters. So there's some other things that we're doing behind the scenes, and we continue to have those conversations with our federal and local partners, and again, putting officers out in the areas that they need to be. So those are about the numbers, and if there's any other questions, I can take that as well.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you. I know you got that data pretty quickly for me today, which might mean that it's fairly on top of your information pile as well. But I'll tell you, is more than just the numbers and the data. From our first meeting when we met, I was impressed with what you brought to our city, and I can tell you that from Peorians all over the city, they have really come forward to talk to me about just the interactions that you and your whole department are having with our community are just are making a difference. They appreciate the efforts and the relationships that are being built. Thank you for all of your efforts that you are doing and that you're leading, and please thank your whole department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Chief. Councilman Riggenbach?
Madam Mayor, one report back for the manager, if I may throw that out there. In the budget, in the CDBG COVID fund column, we have $600,000 that we're giving to the Park District for a project. That I have no, it's a great project at Tree One Park, but it seems a little odd for us to be giving money to another governmental entity. As I've been talking with representatives from Local 50 and the fire department command staff, and we talk about the big picture, and if we build new stations, and I believe it's 16, the one on Northmore Road is up for, we had talked about that a number of years ago. It would be worth having a discussion with the Park District about some land they own at the corner of Northmore and Knoxville. They have a storage shed there, and the professionals from our fire department thought that that site would be something worth discussing. So the reason I'm bringing that up now is as part of our discussion with the Park District for them making these improvements in their park, I would like that to have a caveat that they would be willing to discuss the possibility of a long-term lease with us for property in that general area. So if you could have discussions and report back on that. Also, I just want to say I appreciate having the department heads come into chambers as they answer questions. I think that makes the discussion much more meaningful for all of us. So hopefully we'll have some clarity from the governor by the end of the week as to making that a more permanent fixture. And then finally, I would ask, this past week, the mayor and I were at a ribbon cutting for East Bluff Partners as they unveiled their affordable housing in the East Bluff. And this is an amazing project that took a lot of tenacity from Peoria Opportunities Foundation. And now we have Phoenix working on the old Methodist college site to make that a family shelter for those, for families with multiple bedrooms, and just some good stuff happening in that space. And I think it would behoove us, Mr. Manager, to work with Kate Green at the Continuum of Care after the first of the year, perhaps have a policy session and just kind of outline the partners involved in the continuum and what the need is and what our role as a council is to address the unsheltered matter here in the city. So obviously we got a lot to do before we get to that point, and I understand they're adding some staff, I think, too, at the first of the year. So, first quarter, let's try to get that on the docket. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Speaking of getting things on the docket, we are required under the law, under the Open Meetings Act, by the state to have training in the Open Meetings Act. I think that we need that. I think we're supposed to have it within a certain small period of time after we first are seated. And I've never had it, and I think we need that, and I think that we need a little bit of basic training in Robert's rules. We're kind of tripping over ourselves here on some of these things, and as an excuse, I suppose, to address it, the law does require it, and we're not observing that. So,
unfortunately, Councilman, the OMA training is closed. It's not available right now from the Attorney General's unless it's just opened back up, Council.
it is closed, but the law says that you can also take training through another source. And so I think that would be helpful to us. Thank you.
Yes, and we have a number of commissioners also that have been waiting for the Attorney General's training, and they've been meeting and you know, not able to get that training or certification. Do we have any idea, Council, when that may open back up?
Thank you, Mayor. No, in conversations with the public access counselor, unfortunately, they have no idea when that site will be back up. So members that have served on the council for a while, I suspect have taken Open Meetings Act training because it would be on file with the clerk. New members need to have that certification generally done within 90 days of the election, right. But they've said, unfortunately, they were subject to a ransomware attack that crashed the entire system, and so it's still offline at this point. We could certainly talk to the Illinois Municipal League because I think the training has to be done by an outside agency. I would also have to check because that may be limited to the school boards and the township officials that can have other agencies come in and do it. That's the official training where you get the certifications, but we could certainly do some just general Open Meetings Act training or provide some PowerPoints or some videos, whatever would be most useful for everyone.
You're very welcome. Lastly, to close out new business, I want to congratulate the IHSA cross-country meet that was held at Detweiler Park this past Saturday. There were thousands and thousands of people that were in our city for that meet, lots of boys and girls from all over the state because Detweiler is the official state track for cross-country, so everybody looks forward to running on that state track. It was a very exciting event. It's hosted by Peoria High School. It was quite amazing, and these people they filled our hotels, they visited our restaurants, and they contributed to economic development right here in Peoria. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the recent passing of the historic $1.2 million bipartisan infrastructure package and what it could mean for Peoria. This funding will support roads and bridges, major infrastructure projects, investments in water and energy systems and in broadband, in transportation safety and electric vehicle chargers. And one of my favorites, Councilman Riggenbach is my council partner for passenger rail, but this funding will also support passenger rail and Amtrak. And we'll provide you some updates on our efforts very, very soon because a feasibility study is kicking off, and so we want to bring that information to council very soon. Some of this funding will have to be applied for, and some of it, dispersed through competitive grant processes, and some of it will likely be allocated based on a formula that they have. So, again, in talking with Director Powers, Public Works, he anticipates that it's going to create capacity challenges, perhaps staffing challenges, engineering challenges. But I think that this is a good problem for us to have. It's going to create more jobs. And in the long run, I think that we'll be in a stronger position as it relates both to our finances as well as to our assets. Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council and Town Board.
I have 6 cards. The first individual is Mr. Eric Larson. You would just give us your address as well, Mr. Larson.
Yes, I work at 7500 North Harker. I'm with Illinois American Water. Thank you, Mayor Ali and council members, for this opportunity to speak. It's been challenging even to listen to the topics that have been going on. Thank you for your service. I was breaking out in a sweat just listening to the challenges we need to overcome here locally. I know that the water company did come up and reserving funds for 2022 and 2023. My hope right now is just to provide some education, some liabilities that are coming to the industry and here to Peoria, and then at the end really offer my service to Peoria and the council if you would like to engage in more discussion. So I was a teacher for the first 3 years of my career, so I'm going to go through and give like a keyword that you could take notes under if you so like. Sorry, I don't have a handout prepared for you. But the first keyword is law. In Illinois, municipal funds generated from water are in an enterprise fund, and there they remain. They can't be used outside the enterprise fund unless you go to debt to the enterprise fund, in which you have to pay it back. So a water system or owning a water system does not solve a pension problem. It doesn't solve roads. It doesn't solve crime. It's not a moneymaker. And since we last were here talking about it in October, November 2018, there have been 14 Illinois municipalities that have sold their system to us because they understand it's not a moneymaker, it's a liability. And I'd like to point out some of those challenges facing the industry. So the next key word for your notes is challenges. It's becoming quickly more and more challenging. So right now, the IEPA is setting up some rulemaking on PFAS and PFOA. These are the forever chemicals that come from your Teflon coating dishware. There's emerging contaminants. There's Legionella. There's lead legislation. Governor Pritzker just passed HB 3739 that's bringing tens of millions of dollars of obligations, hundreds of millions across the state. There's certified operator challenges. There's new cybersecurity threats that are in the news often. These are the hot topics challenging our industry. Next keyword is liabilities. So what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? Just here in Peoria, in today's dollars, the lead legislation means over $60 million of expense. So taking on the system would be taking on a $60 million lawful obligation, liability, that the city of Peoria would have to take on. We have begun a transition to make the water system here in Peoria a smart system to detect leaks earlier. Last month, we saved Bradley University over 36,000 gallons of lost water to leaks. The beauty of our business model is that you take all these costs and these liabilities that are across the state, they get rolled up, okay, and then we can send them where there is need. Across the state, there isn't lead everywhere. There are some key river points, river towns that first established the state, like Rock Island, East St. Louis, Peoria, that carry most of the burden of the lead in Chicago. Okay, right now what we have with this lead legislation and the liability here and the costs then being shared across the Illinois American Water footprint is that these costs that are coming from Peoria are shared by the state. If this council so chooses in the next couple of years to vote to pursue the system, this would be a cost borne only and solely by the city of Peoria. So right now, the city of Peoria has a chance of using other people's money to attack this lead problem and remove it from the city of Peoria. One other liability would be taking on 80 more employees, which would come with it pension obligations for 80 more employees. We have a pension issue right now we're talking about adding 80 more to those payrolls, and that problem that would be added to it. So we are specialized, we're focused, we're large, and we're networked. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to jump. I'm sorry. Growth. We can't move our assets. Ameren can't move their assets. We're all interested in growth. With every person that comes here, that's another real estate tax dollar. You know, it's meals, it's sales tax, it's everything. Why not set aside money?
Can you send us a presentation? Or,
yes,
okay,
I can.
Can you send it by email to the clerk and she can forward it to the rest of the council?
Certainly. And I just want to offer my time, myself as a resource, if ever we want to talk about growth and how we could partner to make growth happen here in Peoria. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Ryan Cannon. Ryan still here? Okay. Mr. Jeff Colbus. I don't think he's still here. We have Mr. Victor Murray.
Hello. 842 West St. James. And I want to say also, I'm a postal carrier, so I understand about retirement problems that's being faced. Believe me, ours is in the billions. But anyway, I do want to say though that honestly, the problem's still there. The mandate that the state has given you, you still have this problem. And I love the idea of what Council Member Riggenbach was saying, that going to Springfield, but we're only one city, or one small group going to Springfield. You need the whole entire municipality of Illinois if you're going to do it that way. I mean, seriously, you're all smart people, and I know that you all have passion on this subject. But if you're going to do it that way, you need the whole entire state of Illinois municipalities going with you at the same time. Numbers count. Anyway, also I want to say that the problem with also you were saying about a Band-Aid to a problem, and it's a delay action, I agree with that, but there's no problem with doing 3 or 4 different things at the same time, trying to fix the problem. I mean, honestly, if anything else, it's going to give the employees, the firefighters, the idea that you are trying to fix the problem. I know it's not going to fix the problem exactly, because $300 million is a lot of money, but you're going to be showing the people of Peoria that you also have a dog in the fight, and that you also are trying to fix, that we're going to go together and try and fix this problem. By the way, I had a better prepared notes, but I got here late, so sorry, I started it from scratch again. Anyway, like I said, I'm a letter carrier. I've seen our firefighters and police do some amazing things. I've seen them actually save somebody from an overdose right in front of me. So I know that your hearts are in the right place, and that you really want to, Councilmember Recreacle, when you say that you do support the firefighters. But at the same time, we still have a problem. We haven't fixed anything. All we've done is just talked about this problem. And I know, and also another thing too, I noticed that we had these four proclamations earlier today. Well, these are all smart people. These are all innovative people. I think if we were going to do something about this, today's the day to do it. I mean, we are innovative people. And the other problem is too, we've been talking about this for 19 years. I've been driving back and forth. Thanks to WCBU. I've been listening to this when I lived in Chillicothe about these problems. Anyway, I don't really have much to say, except that I think that we're being penny wise but pound foolish in the long run, because obviously we're having a problem with the pension. And also, I want to say this too. Actor Tony Curtis said that service to others is the rent we pay for living on this earth. in honesty, this tax levy is a service to the firefighters that we owe a little bit of, that we owe this obligation. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Next, we have Ms. Teresa Johnson. Ms. Johnson, can you give us your address?
It's Teresa Johansson.
Oh, Joe, okay.
I live on Taylor Road, Kansas City.
Okay.
I'm wanting to comment on the 5G cell towers, the smart city, stuff like that. I live and have lived on Taylor Road where the big towers come through that are from Ameren and ComEd, and I've actually had the activity measured probably over 20 years ago. So I don't have a comparison for today, but I will be getting that. We now have a Verizon tower, also right now there, not on our property, but on the property next to us, probably less than 1/8 of a mile away. So I saw them put up 5G panels, and I don't, according to Verizon's interactive website, those are not open, active yet, but we have had smart meters put in by Ameren within the last year or so. So my husband has developed, he's almost 62, he's never had psoriasis, except for maybe a little in his eyebrows in the winter when it gets dry. But he has full-blown psoriasis now. I mean, it's bad and it's ugly, and we've been to doctors. Nothing seems to help. He's always rubbing this stuff on himself all the time. And we're now resorting to my mother-in-law's ancient Chinese recipe, so hopefully that one's going to work. But I've come upon the fact that 5G and the radiation, the radioactive waves and stuff, it stops at our skin. So good thing it doesn't go into our bodies so much, but our skin absorbs it. So, I mean, I've not been real involved. I'm outside of the city limits. So, I do perk up when I hear smart city stuff and all that, but, how we pay attention when things get personal. And I didn't like it when, the 5G panels were put up. So I have some scientific research, and I have 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So I've waited a long time to come speak, so I'm going to read some of this really quick into the record. So this is from the Journal of Biological Regulators and Homeostatic Agents from June 9th, 2020. It's 5G technology and induction of coronavirus in skin cells by Fiorinelli, M. Fiorinelli from the Department of Nuclear, Subnuclear, and Radiation Physics, G. Marconi University, Rome, Italy, A. Safari, Central Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan. I can give you a copy if you want more on who this is written by. But it says, in this research, we show that 5G millimeter waves could be absorbed by dermatologic cells acting like antennas, transferred to other cells, and play the main role in producing coronaviruses in biological cells. DNA is built from charged electrons and atoms and has inductor-like structure. This structure could be divided into linear, toroid, and round inductors. Inductors interact with external electromagnetic waves, move and produce some extra waves within the cells. The shapes of these waves are similar to shapes of hexagonal and pentagonal bases of their DNA sources. To produce these viruses within a cell, it is necessary that the wavelength of external waves be shorter than the size of the cell. Thus, 5G millimeter waves could be good candidates for applying and constructing virus-like structures such as coronavirus, COVID-19 within cells. Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is the main problem this year involving the entire world. This is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. This virus is a member of related viruses, and I've got 25 seconds, so I'm going to wrap up. There's a lot of formulas here given. There's a lot of very scientific speak, and I will be comparing the new readings to those that Ameren conducted for my family over 20 years ago. It is concluded that in the next generation of mobile technology, emitted waves of towers will have more effects on biological cells. So thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration on this matter before you continue. Just, do some due diligence before it's like, oh yeah, we want to be smart cities, we got to do this, we got to be connected, because it's not a natural thing for our bodies.
Thank you, Ms. Johansson.
So, thank you.
You're welcome. Next is Ms. Jody Altman.
I also wanted to talk about the 5G Smart City, and I have handouts for all city council members and for you, Mayor Ali. I am here to discuss my concern about the possibility of Peoria becoming a smart city and 5G rollout, apart from the violation of privacy that could result from everything being connected to the Internet of Things and data mining, which should be protected by the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 6 of the Illinois Constitution. There is also the issue of cybersecurity. Ransomware attacks are increasing and can hold companies and cities hostage for millions of dollars. Sure, we all remember the Colonial Pipeline ransom of $4.4 million earlier this year. The citizens also will be more susceptible to hacks of our data, and even if the initial reason for smart city technology is to make Peoria more efficient, we all know sometimes when you give the government an inch, they will take a mile. You could use our data and surveillance against us like a bad dystopian movie. My biggest concern is the negative health implications of 5G rollout that would be inevitable with a smart city. The FCC was recently sued and proven to be negligent for not updating their guidelines to protect citizens from the harmful effects of radio frequency radiation. The standards that allowed all companies to continue rolling out wireless technologies haven't been updated since 1996 with 2G, thank you, and is only based on the thermal effects or temperature change in tissue while ignoring substantial evidence of prolonged harm from pulse and modulated RF radiation. An important note about the FCC is the former chairman and current and former FCC commissioners have ties as lawyers or lobbyists to the telecom industry. The FCC is literally protecting the industry they are supposed to be regulating. Earlier this year, there was legislation regarding cell towers voted on in Illinois. I contacted my Illinois state senator and representative and sent emails with information on the negative health effects from the cell towers. The bill allows the placement of hundreds of wireless cells in front of homes, leaving residents no recourse, and it has been shown that property values decrease by 20% in close proximity to towers. My representative sent me a video of Dr. Eric Swanson testifying that cell towers are safe and said he got the video from the Illinois State Research Library. I did a quick search on Dr. Swanson and found that he is paid consultant for CTIA, Cellular Telecom Industry Associate. Due to the type of technology that 5G is, 5G cells would have to be placed at least every 10 homes on existing utility poles, street lamp posts, or new posts. These obviously will be in closer proximity to people due to the height of the poles and the number of them through the neighborhoods. I doubt anyone is aware of this frightening information. I have contacted 3 city council members in the last 3 months. My concerns were ignored. 2 of you I spoke to in person, followed up with emails with information. One I spoke to over the phone, you said, don't bother emailing me because I won't read it. Wait until it's on the agenda. And I'm sorry, I'm not willing to wait until everything is all lined up before we discuss it. You are here to listen to the concerns of the public. If you disregard this information that I am providing to you today verbally and through hard copy, and I will also send emails, I believe you will be in violation of your oath of office and subject for removal. My personal passion about this subject is from 1.5 years suffering with mysterious health issues that I couldn't figure out the cause of. I also had eczema completely all over my whole body, along with at least 5 other symptoms. I saw 10 different health professionals, and every day was researching on my own to find the cause. Finally, one day I came across information on smart meters and the radiation from them. I remembered Ameren had sent me something about smart meters, and I contacted them, found out the same month that my symptoms started, the same month that they put the smart meter outside my bedroom. I was able to put a cover over that, but unfortunately you can't put a cover over a 5G cell tower or the cells outside the home, so there won't be any protection for anyone once it is done. But we do have protection, I believe, from our Constitution. Article 11 of the Illinois Constitution is about environment, the legislative responsibility, public policy of the state, and duty of each person is to provide and maintain a healthful environment for the benefit of this and future generations. And the rights of individuals is each person has the right to a healthful environment. Each person may enforce this right against any party, governmental or private, through appropriate legal proceedings, subject to reasonable limitation and regulation as the General Assembly may provide by law. So I'm just asking for you to please consider the health of the residents of Peoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Altman. Madam Clerk, do we have any other public comments?
No, I have no other comments or cards.
Okay, all right, great. Is there an executive session? No executive session. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember Allen, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Please cast your ballots. Oh, Councilmember Grant.
Okay. Thank you.
You're going to vote to adjourn? You're going to vote to adjourn? Yes. Okay. All right, thank you for your service.